Hello and welcome to another episode of Legendary Sickos, a Legendary Upside and Spike Week Best Ball collaboration. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. I am going to get my housekeeping out of the way quick and early here. If you are not subscribed to Legendary Upside, I don't exactly know what you're doing. Of course, my good friend Pat Kerrane and his team putting out some of the best fantasy content in all of the industry. Best ball focused, dynasty focused, rankings, tree articles, everything there in between. And of course, we at Spike Week focus primarily on the best ball space. We have, of course, best ball content and rankings and such ourselves, but specifically the best ball tools within our premium subscription package. You can get 40% off if you are subscribed to Legendary Upside. Special little promo offer for those folks that subscribe to both of them. So for one discount, you can get, for one, small price, you can get a big discount and use Pat's analysis and rankings and such. Maybe combine it with our rankings and the tools to help you draft the best ball teams possible. Of course, there's some other free stuff that comes with Pat's Legendary Upside subscription as well as ours. You can get free money on Underdog and free money on Drafters if you sign up for both of those things. So lots of free stuff, lots of discounts, all that good stuff.
Yeah, legendaryupside.com/perks for details on that. Yearly subs can get a $50 Underdog credit.
I'll make sure to, I think I've only put the link to sign up in the description. I'll make sure to add that to the description. And of course, the link to sign up for the tools and the code are in the description of this video. But during, we talk, if you listen to us before, we talk a lot, obviously, but we talk tons and tons, both us together on different shows in Discord, whatever, about so many different, subjects. But at the end of the day, like being able to identify players or types of players that can win us all the money is like, kind of important in this game. And we talk constantly about the word I'm trying not to use so much anymore in terms, we like to call it profiles. But we talk about all these individual players.
You did this to yourself. I think it's a fine word. We can just use it.
I know. It's too late. I recorded right before this. I recorded with B. Kurt, who works with me. And I said, I'm going to get like one of those like tickers to put in the background. And every time I say the word profile over the entire summer, I'm going to like add a number to the ticker and see how many we get to on all of the content. It's like one of those things like you never notice it until somebody calls you out on
That's
it. Like,
true.
And so anyway, profiles, the summer of profiles 2024. But like, dude, nobody cares about structure and portfolio and all that stuff more than myself. But like how you specifically put that together, how you specifically figure out who to target. And, we talk about things like, I like this guy with that guy. It all boils down to an assessment of what that player's profile is and what they could be, what the skills that they have are, what their situation is. And so we wanted to take a little time today to be like, how the heck do you even figure out like who is a league winning type profile, right? When somebody says something like small miss, big win, or, small win, big miss type profiles, what does that mean? What are we looking for to figure out some of that stuff? And I have obviously plenty of thoughts, but I'm really fascinated to see, maybe even where we differ on some things that we're looking at in some of these players and see if we can uncover maybe some gems for this 2024 draft season.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into it. Obviously, I mean, some of the stuff like structure and stuff like actually is trying to find league winners, in like, for example, like zero running back. I think you're kind of saying like, I think I have a better chance of finding like league winning receivers early, and then I can still find league winning running backs later. Right. So the structure works because of the way the different types of profiles tend to be priced, right? So we've got, uncertain backfields with a intriguing but unproven but explosive and potentially talented receiver guy. Like that doesn't tend to be a third round pick. It tends to be like a 8th round, 9th round pick.
Yeah.
And so we know that like in a sense, like zero running back is just an approach to finding league winners at the running back position paired with the league winners at the receiver position.
How do you think about, so a word I imagine will come up frequently during this conversation and comes up often throughout, other than profile, throughout the course of the summer, is uncertainty. I will definitely say that a lot. I'll probably say it a lot today, but it's also like really important. Where how much do you think about the level, your assessment of uncertainty in a situation, in an individual player? We will say a lot, right? Like, there is just being a rookie, whether we loved your profile, hated your profile, we're a big fan of you as a player, we don't like you as, right? Like, I don't like Keon Coleman. I did like JSN. That doesn't mean JSN is going to be good. It doesn't mean Keon Coleman is going to be bad. There is uncertainty amongst any rookie because we have just never seen them play an NFL football game. And they clearly had to be like some level of talent to play in the NFL. But like that, how do you just think about this idea of uncertainty, right? There is uncertainty in the Cowboys backfield, but those are both not players that we particularly love. And then there's maybe not uncertainty.
I'm drafting both.
And I know. I just had a long conversation about the Cowboys backfield, and it makes me feel absolutely disgusted. But there's uncertainty there, and I'm drafting those guys, right, because of that uncertainty and the price. But just like balancing that uncertainty idea is like, uncertainty really does breed this upside. Like, and find, right, the Rams were uncertain outside of Cooper Kupp. We had no idea what was going on with the Rams, and thus when those guys are both good and earn the work, you get league winners. But also there's, just varying levels of uncertainty, right? Like, Tank Bigsby's probably bad, but there's a tiny bit of uncertainty because we just never really know about a young player. But just like, how do you think about, that concept? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Tank Bigsby's a good example where, we're fairly certain about him in terms of, he's not great. Maybe he's better than he was last year. Maybe he could be like a Chuba Hubbard type of level talent. I mean, Chuba was not good as a rookie, but then pretty good as a sophomore. That was the year he split with Deontay Foreman down the stretch a little bit. And then last year was like, oh, this dude can play a little bit. Then they replaced him with the second round running back. I think, so it's not like he was any, Chuba's Chuba, but I think Tank has that potential upside. And then I see the number 2. It's starting to look like, he's still the number 2. Kind of lost that role down the stretch last year. Maybe he loses it again. But I don't love Tank because I feel fairly confident that he's like not something special, right? Not something that
Kyren Williams. He's not
Kyren.
He's not. He's not the guy that we took late and next year we're taking him very highly. And he's not the guy. Like, this is to the uncertainty thing. It's like, he has uncertainty, but we're pretty certain his uncertainty is not like that kind of range of outcome.
He has uncertainty in the sense that like we don't know everything. He's a second-year player, but we're actually for a second-year player we didn't see a ton of. I'm like pretty certain about Tank Dell. And I'm much more interested in Kendre Miller. We got a little bit of flashes.
Oh yeah.
There's a coaching change. There's a scheme change in terms of the, them going to kind of more the Shanahan style rushing attack. The starter ahead of him is more uncertain in the sense of like, Kamara's kind of winding down his career. His rushing efficiency is really falling off. ETN's rushing efficiency was actually pretty bad last year, but he's a young player. So you feel like, who's going to take the job? Tank's not taking anything. Tank's holding. We're hoping Tank's holding the RB2 job. Kendre, I don't know. It's possible. So that kind of uncertainty, I mean, and that's why Kendre goes way ahead. But it's like, I think once you get to, Jacob Sanderson's written about this, where like you get to kind of points at the positions where like uncertainty is the point at past a certain price point. Uncertainty becomes the reason that you want to be taking guys. You don't want to be betting on, like, if we're rock solid about a guy and he's going in the 7th round, that tells you we don't think he's that good,
Yeah.
So
Rashad White types, right? It's
Rashad White, yeah.
We know what he is. We don't know exactly how much Bucky Irving is going to steal. Maybe we'll talk about Bucky at some point, but we don't know, total. We never know everything about any single situation, but we're like, yeah, like I kind of know what this deal is. I kind of know how good Rashad White is. And so we plop him into the dead zone and, and we move on.
Yeah. And I think you do, like in this game, you want to be able to be really, really wrong in a way that's extremely beneficial, and that's, I think rookies give us the biggest way to do this is rookies, or players who really haven't seen, because we can just the error bars are so wide in terms of the talent eval that we have, that the coaches have, that the NFL has. Like the Texans didn't know what they had in Tank Dell, and Stroud was the one telling them to draft him,
So they didn't probably know what they had in CJ Stroud. I mean, he wasn't even the consensus. They got him dropped into their lap because the Panthers are incompetent. But like, none of us were sitting here pounding the table for CJ Stroud last year.
No, I definitely was not. So yeah, I mean, that's a great point. CJ Stroud didn't know what he had. Or we were uncertain about that situation. He is able to just be like, boom, way, way better than this price indicates. Jordan Love was able to do that too, a guy we hadn't really seen. So like that, that uncertainty is, it's just, otherwise they would just be more expensive. You have to, but then to me, there are guys where I'm like, I think this is just kind of risk seeking. Like we're not not all uncertainty equals upside. Yeah, well, like Tony last year was one I was out on.
So who jumped to my mind when you said that? And I'm not sure that this is totally true because I do think there was some uncertainty, but Rashad Penny. Maybe I'm just hindsighting because I do think there was a level of uncertainty in the backfield. I do think, but it feels Tony-esque. We're selling the idea of the player, and then we're like, oh, the situation got better. And then we like the idea of what we think this player could become. So, like you said, we just started seeking that risk when it was like, was it real? Like, were we?
No, it never was
any about that real. Yeah,
I don't. Yeah, and like the reports on the contract was like, there's really no money here. The reports at a training camp were like, yeah, they don't really see this guy as really anything. So we had but we were like, no, this guy's awesome. Better. We know better. Yeah, we know better, and. That's actually not betting on uncertainty. That was us betting on our own talent eval on Penny. Yeah, so I think that's a really good one. That was probably risk seeking. That uncertainty was uncertainty about, do they play this guy? Do they keep this guy on the active roster?
Is he going to be on the team?
Is he going to be on the team even? And we're like, yeah, he'll be on the team.
He's too good. He's too good. Don't you look at the metrics? We know he's too good. You guys are idiots. You guys are idiots.
The best time is when it's like, oh yeah, like he definitely the situation is like robust. Like we were just talking about Bo Nix last night on Ship Chasing, and that's one where it's like Sean Payton, like he needs this to work. Like he's gone all in now on Bo Nix. Like Bo Nix can be kind of bad and still like put up points in fantasy this year, especially well, I was going to say especially at the end of the season, but I think he starts week 1. So it's just whenever. He just put up points whenever. So that's one where I'm like, now I don't know if Bo Nix is good. I am truly uncertain about that. But I am certain that he is going to play. He's going to play probably the entire season. If he doesn't, it was because he was really bad, and I was like kind of losing the bet anyway. So that's, to me, like Bo Nix is an example. And I'm not like I'm not drafting the hell out of Bo Nix because I take so much Drake May, but I'm trying to take more Bo Nix because I'm like, man, I'm certain about I'm certain about that he's going to get an opportunity to show us. I'm uncertain about what that opportunity will yield, but that's the perfect. If I can find spots like that, that's really ideal. And that, if you want to say, what was it about Kyren? I was pretty certain at the end of the year, at the end of the offseason, that Kyren was going to get an opportunity to show us. I did not think that he was going to be what he was like at all. Like that was not.
Nobody did.
Yeah, his range of outcomes I would have put like 3 tiers below what he actually did as his highest upside.
Right,
So
Rashad White or something. If you got the Rashad
yeah,
White season of
Rashad
Kyron,
White.
you were like, oh my God, we just hit the 99.9
That would have felt
percentile outcome.
too fraud. I would have been like, come on, man. That's
Yeah, like
gotta be
really?
Rashad.
Yeah. Well, he ran like 4.7, man. He's 195 pounds.
Yeah. But I mean, Bucky Irving would be like an example this year where I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're going to get to see what Bucky can do. Like that feels like a safe bet. And he goes like in the 170s. So like you're getting the certainty of like they just don't have anything else at RB2. They spent some draft capital on him. I don't know if he's good or not, but like I think we're going to find out. Tank last year, frankly, I took a lot of Tank. I think Tank was a good bet last year. We were certain he was going to be the RB2. He was going to get a shot. He did get a shot. He's not good, But that's the type of bet I think we should be really strongly making. Not that you never take the uncertain, depth chart situations, but to me that kind of risk is, especially in best ball, and I think this is probably one of the big transitions that we need to make from redraft to best ball is like, look, man, in best ball, like in redraft, like take the biggest swing available in that round. And also like, don't take the small swings. Like what's the point? Like Josh Downs does not have a lot of utility in a managed league, but I like Josh Downs a lot in best ball because he's the starting slot receiver. And I think he can play, And so it's like, have a couple good weeks for me and, correlate with Anthony Richardson and help those spike weeks, hit extra hard. That sounds awesome. But in redraft, like I'm not going to be if I'm plugging in Josh Downs in my lineup, like either he was way better than I thought, or I'm just like, don't have a very good team.
Yeah. It's probably the second. I actually think that is so you say this, a lot of people are, this is not a novel idea, but the concept of having to start someone and click them into a managed league lineup, I think is undersold in just drastically how different it is for strategy in redraft versus They are such different games. We talked about this on APAST or the last episode or one of the recent episodes about how different they are. And I don't think it's totally appreciated, but it really boils down to that like the idea of having to click someone into your starting lineup over other options and while trying to outscore your opponent is like a huge deal, man. I get to draft 20 dudes and it's just like whatever happens. I get the good weeks. I don't have to worry about the bad weeks. It's like, that's a big, like George Kittle, we've talked about, Devon Achane. These guys have like a ton of utility on a best ball team because you have cover for the weeks where, and you don't have to pick when the big weeks come. It's like, I would not have started whatever, right? I would not have started Achane against they play the Browns in week 17. So that's the first matchup that's coming. Am I really that excited about Mostert and Jaylen Ryder healthy and Achane is playing the Browns? Am I really that excited to click him into my starting lineup? Not really. But in best ball, who gives a shit? If that's the week he has the big week, great. We get to benefit from that and we don't have to worry about it. Whereas with Josh Downs, like you said, it's like he could have an awesome year and he could exceed expectations and he could have zero use in a redraft league for me because I never ever felt good enough about starting him. You need to see a Puka level breakout to ever feel comfortable with starting that type of a player. I'm not comparing Puka and Josh Downs, right? But Tank Dell, how long would it have taken you to start Tank Dell in a redraft league last year? Probably almost before it was over.
Almost right before it was over, you would have been starting him with confidence.
Right. Even like Nico Collins. Like Nico and Tank went from late round guys to second and fourth round picks in fantasy, and you didn't get to use most of their breakouts in your redraft league because you were like, is this real? I do DFS content, you do weekly content every single week around the game of football. And I can tell you the conversations that we have about someone like Tank Dell. You're like, yeah, like this looks good, but like how confident in that, right? To it's still uncertain while we're watching the breakout and it's uncertain. So like think about the uncertainty over the summer, but that difference I think was super important. So like to your point on like Josh Downs is like, I don't know how much uncertainty there is in like exactly how good I don't know exactly how good Josh Downs is. I feel fairly confident he's not Justin Jefferson, but like that still has utility. His uncertainty, it has a lot of utility. compared with the certainty, like you mentioned, that like he's the starting slot receiver for the Colts. I kind of know what the Colts
and he's
deal
like
is.
pretty good. Like he's pretty good. He's his limitations. Right. He's a small guy. He's a smaller guy. He's with a quarterback who, like, I'm not loving taking his underneath and intermediate options. I'm not taking any Michael Pittman like at all. Right. So, but like if Michael Pittman was a 5th round pick, I would take him. Exactly. You know, I just think he just shouldn't be a 3rd round pick in my opinion. But, you know, you get down to Josh Downs. Josh Downs is going in the 130s. So I'm like, sure, like you're giving me a pretty big discount on, you know, some reduced round participation and, you know, more uncertainty about the talent profile. But I think we have enough. There were enough flashes where I feel like he can play. You know, I feel like I'm getting the upside of he might be pretty damn good, but I'm not having to risk. You know, is he even out there? Uncertainty.
Yeah. So here's the question on that. Josh Downs is an awesome example, I think, of this. Can that player be, you know, league winner is such I hate the term because it especially in best ball, it's like George Pickens and Amari Cooper were league winners, but we look back and you're like, nobody ever thinks about them, right? Like
right.
Everybody only thinks about Kyren and Puka and Achane, and like Tank Dell even gets lost in the league winner conversation because he didn't play in the fantasy playoffs, and it's like, like that was like a seismic. Tank Dell getting hurt was like a seismic event for best ball. It's just we never think about it. It's like nobody won with Tank Dell because he was hurt, but he was like, you know, however we want to rank Kyren, Puka, Achane,
best picks on the board. He was one of the very best picks.
Like probably
if you had
top
a big
5,
big bag of Tank, 10. Like that was sharp as hell.
Right. And that was and it helped you because you got more teams to advance and whatever, but like he didn't help you when it mattered. So we kind of forget about it.
Yeah. And some people will even say, like, what are you talking about? He got hurt, therefore a bad pick.
Right, so exactly. And
it's a lovely game still.
It's the whole he finished this, the wide receiver 42. What do you mean he's the league winner? It's like, man, like what are we talking about? But so the Josh Downs archetype of a player, we're agreeing that he has utility in best ball and maybe not so much in managed, but can that player be a league winner when I think you would agree there is a certain level of and whatever probability you want to put to it on a 0 to 100 scale that he's like legit awesome. Even then, I'm not sure he's Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase.
Yeah, he's not really a league. He's not a league. I mean, I would say you can look at Downs like he's not a league winner. He's a way to kind of like keep your roster intact when you hit on league winners, and you have guys like Josh Downs, because best ball is a game of ceiling and floor, right? You need to hit on the league winners, and then you need to have ideally 18 live roster spots when you get to the final, right? This is one of the things Leone's research is really hammering home. Like, if you could pick anything, you would just take all my players stay healthy and are starters. that would be it. Just give me 18 healthy starters, and I'll figure out the rest. But that would be like the very kind of most plus EV thing you could do. We can't control the healthy part, and I generally think that we're not only can we not control it, we're horrendous at predicting injuries. The guys who never are like rock solid get hurt almost as much as the guys we think are going to get hurt. Maybe there's a little.
Aaron Rodgers, other than age, was probably the least injury. Like if we would have ranked all the top 200 players, he would have been one of the least, predictable injury wise guys, because he literally never gets hit. He plays this. They play the slowest amount of, or the least amount of plays in Aaron Rodgers games. Like everything would have said, no, this is the least likely guy to get hurt, and he didn't even make it a series. Into the season.
Yeah. And I think and generally, I'm not saying there's nothing, but a lot of it is priced in. So if you're specifically going oh, this guy's going to get hurt, it's like, is it because you think he's old? Like that everyone knows he's old. Like that's why.
Remember Tua last year?
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly.
The Tua takes, the people should delete their Twitter accounts. The Tua takes were egregious. And I'm not even saying like it's not even like it's rooted in anything wrong. Concussions are a big deal. He had 2 really gnarly ones that looked bad last year. I understand where it's coming from, but it was rooted in human logic. It wasn't rooted in probability logic. If that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of that, with the injury prone stuff. So, I don't know. Where were we on the injury?
I don't remember.
Yeah. How do we get there? How do we get down to injury proneness?
How do we get out of this? So what I brought up Josh Downs because we're talking about upside and varying levels of upside and utility to our teams and all that kind of stuff. Because to use your number one, totally agree, right? If we could only get one thing, I just want bodies. I know they're playing an NFL football game in week 17, number one. But the number two thing, it would be like, okay, I got that, right? I got lucky and got that. Now I want certain archetypes of players from within there that can actually win me all the money, right? I actually just recorded a show before this with my buddy B. Kurt, where we said, like, think about the player even if you don't love them. So I don't really like Stephon Diggs at his price. You mentioned Michael Pittman. I agree on that one. I think the order of some. I agree with the general market on the elite wide receivers as a whole. I don't agree with the order on them, right? But I can see. Can I see if I flipped over the cards and I said you have Stephon Diggs on your Week 17 team and he's 2% owned? Can he have a big game that wins you all the money? I would say absolutely. Yes, of course. I would be excited about that, right? If I flip over the cards in week 17, I have this guy on my team. Do I see the path to him winning, having a huge game and winning me all the money? So I don't want to nitpick I don't want to try to be that right. I don't want to nitpick the order. Right. It's like, well, I have him behind 3 guys who go behind him. So, I'm no better. I don't want to take any of that guy. But I don't want to take players who don't have that. Right. And that's where we get into this Josh Downs thing that I think is interesting, because I don't want to say he doesn't have the ability to where I flipped over the cards and I said Josh Downs is a great guy to have in week 17, but he doesn't have Jamar Chase. So you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I'm like, he definitely has like, I could be excited about that. So that means he's in my portfolio, but like in terms of like finding a league winner and a guy that wins me all the money, where does that fit?
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think to me, like the Josh Downs archetype, in that kind of style of bet, it's like, it's well priced. It's not something I want to pay a ton for, but it's well priced because I'm trying to piece together a team of guys who are scoring points, like where you're not taking those zeros. And we got down to the injury prone thing because it's like, I'm not like as focused on, am I going to prevent this from injuries? I'm more focused on, am I going to be able to prevent this from not drafting like a Rashad Penny, or even worse, drafting like a Tony who, like, I mean, I'm more willing to.
Penny at least technically had like 2 guys get hurt and it's not over. Like Tony had nothing. And I'm not trying to. It sounds like copium probably for Rashad Penny. I don't even mean that, but I just mean like.
But it's also running back. Like I'd rather take that shot at running back.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like the receiver, I mean, like I'm pulling up Fareed's team from last year, right? Like he, Fareed who won Best Ball Mania 4. Obviously, he had huge scores on this lineup. He got 33.7 points out of CeeDee Lamb. James Conner went off for 25.8, Kyron for 29.10, Jordan Love 28.4. You got the spike week out of Juwan Johnson after the Sam Laporta spike week in week 15, helping him get there. Johnson had 19, wasn't massive, but pretty nice at tight end, right? But he also had 19 points out of Amon-Ra, 16.6 out of George Pickens. I would say spike week out of Jaden Reed, 23.9. But like he had 2 scores there where you're just like, good enough. Good enough. You needed to hit the league, like the true league winners. Now he won by like 14 points. So
shit on all of
he
us.
He absolutely crushed.
That's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
But the second place score was only 0.5 above third place. So, if his team had not been drafted, we're talking about, getting like a pretty middling score on your roster, making a big difference to where, you're very excited to have like, the 19 Amon-Ra points are massive, and that's not that great of a score. Or, a tight end, he had Laporta hit his lineup in second place. So like to get that, like, 11 points at tight
Didn't
end.
we all?
Yeah, we all kind of did. Yeah. You need to have like all the big hits and then also some small hits, that kind of filter in around. And so you're trying to get like just an insane amount correct. And taking on risk of, is this guy even out there? Is you really, I think, only want to be doing that in the late rounds, or at least in the double digit rounds. And so just being like wary of stuff like that, where we keep doing this with quarterback, right? Like we did it again with Justin Fields, and I mixed him in some, and then I kind of like clicked for me, partly because Sam Sherman was in my ADP chasing chat every day, just going, what are we doing with Fields, guys? This is the stupidest thing ever. He's right. He was right. And Justin Fields was, in the big board, he fell, but he didn't really fall far enough. He should have fallen to sometimes gets drafted like he does now. But like we did it with Trey Lance, we did it again, kind of not as bad, and only for the big board with Justin Fields. But that's like one where like I think it's a mindset shift from redraft where we just have to stop doing that. Like if a quarterback doesn't have job security, especially I kind of guess I'm doing it with Drake May because I think he's really a great prospect, but he is at least a rookie who is very likely playing by the end of the season, and he's really cheap. But I don't know. Maybe this is just me doing it again with Drake May at a cheaper cost. But I think like the Trey Lance thing, looking back, I mean that is just us not understanding the format. I think
Agreed.
7th round pick for a guy who might not be a starter, like that's not how you play this type of game. I think.
I agree, and I was the biggest Trey Lance slappy you've ever seen. I
was drafting the hell out of it. Yeah,
I'm more than happy to admit. And then I would cope and saying, "Well, I was in it first when he was in the 13th round." Yeah, but you rode
you chased him up. Yeah,
you kept buying Malcolm Brogdon top shots all the way to the top, buddy. Let's not brag. Let's not brag about being in at the beginning because it didn't matter. You didn't profit off of it, so who gives a fuck? Although I did profit off Top Shot. That's not a literal example. Shout out to me. But but it's so true. Like that, there is this insane balancing act. Why I thought Josh Downs was such a good example, and honestly, why like Tank Bigsby is such a good example, is because they have a win condition that's like relevant and impactful. Like you said, Chuba was such a fucking spot on. You've had two comps that I was just like, damn, that was good. This summer, the Achane is the George Kittle of running backs. Will stick with me for the rest of my life. But Tank as a Chuba, as like, this is what it looks like when this wins, most likely.
Yeah.
It's like that to me, that's like, okay, this is good, but it's not. If we're ranking all of our right, how do we find league winners? Like that's not really that's like a useful asset that is not a zero to me in my portfolio. Same thing. Josh Downs being the guy that can absolutely help me win, but I'm also admitting when I'm drafting him, I'm not getting, a superstar, a fantasy superstar.
Right.
Is like balancing that, but then balancing that against, if Rashad Penny gets on the field for the Eagles as the running back, I do think he can be a league winner, but he's also probably not even going to fucking play for the Eagles.
Right.
Like, Josh Downs versus Rashad Penny, someone will look back like, oh, LOL, you idiot with Rashad Penny. And I think that's probably true. But then how do we balance against the profiles where I know for sure he's not Justin Jefferson, but that doesn't mean he's undraftable either. There's this weird gray area in best ball specifically. Which is why I'm glad you brought up redraft. Is like, honestly, I don't want those middle ground guys in redraft. I need home run swings. I want to have a starting lineup of all superstars, right? By the end of the year, I want my starting lineup to be Kyron and Achane and Chase and Puka and Tank and, Laporta and whatever, right? I would just want it to be all the hits.
Yeah.
In best ball, of course, I want all of those hits. I want to take those shots, but I also don't want to take only those shots when there is utility, very, very real utility in the doubles, right? Josh Downs is a double.
Yeah.
And balancing the doubles with the home run swings is like the hardest part of all this from a player perspective. It's really hard. When do I take Zeke or Dowdle? Right? When do I take Zeke or Dowdle? Totally understanding
Today.
These are never. Yeah, I know.
The answer is today.
The answer is a lot, apparently, based on my drafts, which don't tell anybody that. But like, when do I take Rico Dowdle or Zeke? When I look, they're not Bijan or Brees, right? This is not Brees Hall. This is not Kevin Williams. But they're useful.
Yeah.
Versus when do I swing on Ty Chandler? Right? Or Kendre. I fucking love Ken. Like right now, Kendre is my highest owned running back. How often do I swing on Kendre? Where like, I mean, I think he's going to have a job. I think he could just take the whole goddamn thing over. He also could just back up Kamara and Jamal Williams again. Again. Like, you know, I don't know. So like that balancing act is a tricky one.
It is. I think you want to go back. So what I would say, like, okay, 2 years ago, right? Josh Jacobs. Smashes, absolute smash, league winner. That's what we want. But I think it's helpful to go look and see who the other, maybe not league winners were, but like what worked here. What was sufficient to where it was like, yup, I want that guy. Miles Sanders was the other guy from that range. Now he didn't have the big set.
I wouldn't take Josh Jacobs, but I was taking
I know.
Genius. That makes a lot of sense.
But like, you go, okay. So Miles Sanders in this range is a really nice hit, actually. And okay, last year, right? Brees. You want Brees. But ETN was a pretty nice hit, you know, and that's like another okay. Like I'm trying to kind of constantly do stuff like that where you're like trying to dial
Gibbs?
in.
How would you compare Gibbs in that range? Pretty similar.
Like, Gibbs was I know his production came at the end of the year. So
but same thing, right? Like Gibbs, Brees, ETN is all like, we never talk about Gibbs either because
that's true.
But we talk about Brees, and we should. But it's like Gibbs was pretty.
Gibbs was a smash. Yeah, Gibbs was a smash. Yeah. I think that's a good example. Like Gibbs is the guy. Like if you hit on Gibbs at that price, that's clearly a win. And we don't know what the other players are going to do in the range, and if we're going to be like, yeah, but you'd rather have had. Then no, that's not the way to look at it. The way to look at it is this guy did this for this price. Is that kind of worth it? And if we see this type of setup again, should we be interested? And, you know, Gibbs, you know, kind of a classic pass catching, you know, high draft capital, talented, like pretty talented, exciting guy, really strong setup. I mean, his setup didn't even break perfectly. And he was a league winner.
T-Mont never even got hurt. We haven't even seen the ceiling.
Yeah. I think he missed like a game or two.
Yeah,
but
I'm terrified. We also talked about this on the show I just recorded. I think I'm more terrified. You know, I'm drafting basically only 0 running back, and so aren't you worried about? Everybody always asks about CMC, and I'm like, sure, but he's the 101. Like, you know, it is what it is. I was only going to get maybe 8%. If I was lucky of him anyway. So it's like, aren't you worried about him? Like, not really, honestly. I have CeeDee Lamb or Tyreek Hill or whatever compared to that. I'm not that worried. Who am I worried about? Like Jahmyr Gibbs? Like he might just like take over the whole shit and be better than all of these guys, even with Demont there. And if Demont gets hurt, he might be the 101. Like, yes, I'm terrified of that.
Yeah. No, I mean, Gibbs is interesting because I think he wasn't as efficient last year as it feels like he was. And I think there's a lot of opportunity costs to go running back there. And so in a different market, I'd be like, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm in on this price. But I think that market has him going like behind Taylor and behind Barkley. And I'm like deciding between him and Puka. But I'm not. You know, so I'm taking this is all to say I am taking Gibbs. There's no one else that I think I should take over Gibbs, even though I have like some question marks about him because of the upside. The upside's definitely there.
He's going like closer to the 49ers wide receivers than he is to the
Exactly.
elite running backs. And it's like I'm considering capitulating. Basically, I brought this up because on DraftKings you can take some detours a little bit more easily than you can on Underdog, and of course, especially for someone like Gibbs, the scoring is much better with full PPR and bonuses. That like I've considered capitulating a little bit on Jahmyr Gibbs specifically because I don't have to give up Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb to get him. I have to give up like, Brandon Ayuk, which is a good player, but that's a starkly different opportunity cost to Jahmyr Gibbs. So anyway, it was just an interesting one. While we're talking about kind of like league winners and upside, I thought he was really fascinating and also can be an example of like, who was a league winner? Fucking CeeDee Lamb at the 1-2 turn. It's not all like we always are talking about these Kyren Williams types, but it's like Jahmyr Gibbs going in the second round when he's things break in a way where he's like literally the highest scoring running back in fantasy can be a huge deal.
Yeah. So let's say running back, running back, like if I'm looking for league winners at the start of the draft, right? And this is the legendary upside concept, is like I'm betting on talent. Now the situation has to be there, but it's sort of like table stakes. Basically, is like the guy needs to be in a good enough offense, and get enough work that he can, and ideally some passing work, because passing down stuff is so important. But have access to a team where he's going to be able to get a bunch of touchdowns and just go absolutely nuts. Players can't really go nuts on volume alone. That's just generally very, very difficult to do. You end up with these massive, massive workloads that then, create injury risk and are not usually sustainable. So generally, if a guy's going to go absolutely nuts, you need efficiency plus volume. And efficiency is talent, right? The talented players are the efficient ones. So in the early rounds, I do think, and I think the market's done a good job this year where CMC, Bijan, Brees, we're betting on talent very clearly with all three of those players, and they're in great situations, but we think they're awesome. Gibbs, we think is awesome, right? There you say the situation is maybe like not even that great, but we're betting on the talent. Jonathan Taylor makes some sense to me because I think we're betting on the talent profile from a couple years ago when he was amazing, incredible prospect. We're hoping he basically recaptures talent in a pretty good situation. So I don't think he's a smash, but I get where he goes. Achane, we're betting on talent. That's why I really love betting on Achane, is because I'm getting a discount, I think, on the talent at that point where people are nervous about the situation. They're nervous about how much he can stay on the field and all of that. They're nervous about it, even if he's healthy, how much is he out there, because, he's kind of a more committee back rotational guy. So the situation to me is providing a pretty big discount on the talent. If they installed Devon Achane in like an every down role, shit, like he's a first round pick, so it's really, you're getting a discount on that. And that's where then I go to like, after that, I think now it kind of flips to where we're starting to look more at the situation driving things. I think the situation is driving things on Saquon Barkley. He has not been a difference making talent in many years at this point. And I understand that, the Giants, and this is a big situational upgrade, but like when you hear the bull case for Barkley, a lot of it doesn't have much to do with how good of a running back he is. And that makes me pretty nervous in the second round. Kyren, now that he's fallen to the third, I think we're kind of, okay, we don't love the talent profile. It's good, not amazing. The situation is kind of propping him up. Is the situation, how fragile the situation? It's more fragile than it looked to be before they drafted Corum and he had this foot thing. But like in the third, this is like, I think I'm okay with situation propping it up some and the talent not being amazing in the third, right? Then you get down in the fourth. This is like where we know ETN type payoffs where he wasn't actually that efficient, but he scored touchdowns and he was the guy can pay off. So ETN I think is okay in the fourth. Pacheco's kind of the same bet.
Feels like to me actually a little bit of ETN. I'm not comparing their play styles, but like good real life football player, not amazing. Like he's not a superstar at his position, but he's clearly good enough. And so, like you said, like that fourth-ish round or whatever, where that talent plus situation blend kind of
It
comes
starts
together.
to blend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, like, I think Josh Jacobs has really fallen in drafts because it was when he's going in the third round, people, this guy should be a second round pick and stuff. It's because they were overpriced in the situation. And then the situation, no one really thinks he's like that special of a talent. He was terribly inefficient last year, worse than AJ Dillon in efficiency. So, like, and I know he's on the Raiders and now he's on the Packers, but that is situation. Like, good
he was
players.
Less efficient than Zeke, dude. He was less efficient than Zeke, and Zeke was on the Patriots. Zeke is dust and was on a worse offense than the Raiders, and he was more efficient. So I don't really want to hear about the situational, caveats.
It's concerning. It should be concerning. Like, and like, I don't know, like, Breece Hall did great on the Jets, like, because he's really good.
If you're good, you overcome.
Yeah, like Zach Wilson doesn't also like play, offensive tackle and guard and center. Like they like the Raiders situation was definitely a drag. Just lost my voice talking about Josh Jacobs. It was definitely a drag on Jacobs, but like, anytime you're telling me you got to throw out last year's efficiency, last year's information doesn't count, okay, because the situation was so bad, and don't you know the situation is so much better this year, so we're going to take away all of the information we learned about this guy as a player, and we're going to put it in the trash, and we're going to replace it with optimism. We're going to grab from a bucket called optimism, just put that in as the talent eval. There's the new talent eval because the situation changed. Like, I'm not into that. I'm not doing that. So, now Josh Jacobs, when he falls into the fifth, okay, like that's now I'm getting kind of a discount on what the situation could be. I'm getting a player who could bounce back, Mixon, right? I think he's good and he's not terrible, and the situation's pretty good. That's a situation that I think might be a little underpriced. That's like more of a fourth round type of situation.
So explain this to me. Josh Jacobs, horrendous last year, right? We just outlined that. Goes to the Packers. Okay, upgrade in situation. We're giving him a lot of projectable volume that the coach is literally saying is not true. There's a quote where he said, "We use rotations around here," and everybody has been crowning him a workhorse, which was funny. I
thought he would be with the contract. When they gave him that contract, I was like, "Oh my god, this is a philosophical change." And then they were like, "No, it's not. We don't. We have the same philosophy."
I'm not like drastically opposed to the folks who said he was going to be a workhorse or whatever. I think that was fine. I think that there was context even before, based on Matt LaFleur, based on the Packers, based on the fact they drafted Marshawn Lloyd, right? Based on they brought back AJ Dillon. I know those were a little bit later, but anyway, even if we assumed that Josh Jacobs is the workhorse on the Packers, why the hell was he the poster boy for the underpriced early running back, and no one gave a shit about Joe Mixon going in the fifth round? I can't, like, again, I use the math is not mathing. If it's all like a math equation for why Josh, right? He's going to bounce back. The offensive situation is better and the projection is better, right? It's basically boiling down to, I project him for a lot of fantasy points because of XYZ. What is the difference? What is the difference to Joe Mixon? We're more excited about the Texans. The Texans got 3 wide receivers in the first 4 rounds, dude. They're like the second most expensive offense in the league behind the 49ers. And Joe Mixon goes 2-3 rounds out, not anymore, but 2-3 rounds after Josh Jacobs. So I just think that, like, to the like upside and like finding league winners type stuff is like arbitraging some of these things is like Josh Jacobs versus Joe Mixon to me was like legitimately no different. And one guy went later. So if I'm trying to build in the most upside to my team, like in one draft, like give me the superstar second round or third round wide receiver and give me Joe Mixon. I feel like I built the same team, except a better version of it through that avenue.
Yeah. And the reason why, when I talk about running back like this, the reason why, we've talked about this before, but like, many times before, but especially in this market, like, you can get a lot of the situation stuff later. Now, you can't get the certainty that you have the situation the day you draft it, but you can get situationally driven, volume-based production later. That's the easiest thing to get later. This is what
Devin Singletary or
Devin
Rashad
Singletary
White last year, or James Conner, which a lot of these guys have hit.
Or the contingent guys. I mean,
or
Zach Charbonnet, maybe.
Yeah.
Kendry Miller, maybe. Ty Chandler, maybe. Right? Like these dudes might.
We're talking about the Packers using a rotation. Marshawn Lloyd goes in the 150s or 60 or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
So you have to take the maybe bets, but you're paying a lot for. No. I know what I have, but like what you have isn't that great. And in like over a large sample, when you're going against all these other teams, like they're going to have that too. I don't know from who right now, but they're going to have it. And so like, what are you getting that you can't get later? And if you're just kind of paying for situation, then you're not really going to have much that other people haven't gotten later. That's just the way it really works. I mean, not that we're going to nail every single one of these talent evals, but that's why the talent evals are so important as we were, talking through like the early round running backs. Like you gotta be able to, I mean, look, if you hit on a Mixon, if you hit on Jacobs, if Jacobs is totally fine, he just kind of chugs along, does some, decent stuff, scores some touchdowns, has a few big weeks, stays healthy all season. He's not going to be a disaster in the fourth round. He's going to be a win. But like so it's not that you can't get there, but like it's not the easiest path. If you're like you kind of need it all to kind of fall into place, and when it does, you get like a small win out of it. And this is kind of the classic, when you talk about like the small win, big miss type of profile. I mean, to me, at running back, paying a lot for situation is how you land on a small win, big miss player, because the situation can change, and a situation change is a huge negative for you. One of the first drafts I did with Pete in one of our first high stakes draft, we were out in Vegas, and we were arguing through, there's like recording, we released some of this in a Fantasy Life episode of us like debating his Bucky Irving versus my Justin Forsett, who was the starter for the Ravens heading into the season.
God.
Yeah.
It's bringing back terrible memories.
And, we went completely off the rails where he was saying Bucky Irving was like a special passing down back, but I'm arguing, and that was Pete's point. And I was more wrong because I was arguing for Justin Forsett, who was an immediate nothing, just a horrible pick that year. Mm-hmm. And he was like, dude, it's a bet on, you're betting on the status quo. This is a classic, like the only way this wins is if nothing changes. And like, that's not how the NFL works. We know things are going to change in huge ways. And so like, if you're like, I'm going to take this dude, and as long as everything stays exactly the same all season, I'm going to get a nice small win. Like that's not generally the way we want to play it. We want to be, if situation changes, we want to benefit in a big way. And that's, that's where you start to get into the later profiles. Like, and this is why I like Jaylen Warren so much, right? Jaylen Warren, if the situation changes, the biggest thing would be that he gets more work. I mean, most situation changes would involve Warren getting more work because we expect it to be a split that slightly favors Najee.
Well, right. If it changes, he can't get I mean, I guess
he could,
but like, there's more chain scenarios that changed where he gets more work than there are the opposite.
Yeah. Change generally helps Warren. We want, like, we're not betting on the status quo with Warren. We're betting on chaos. And I think you want to be – now, I'm also getting the security of really efficient player, right? Versatile player. He's truly versatile. Like, he is big and he's 215. Like, he can play on early downs. That's not a problem. He was incredibly efficient as a rusher.
He's fucking huge, by the way. He's
yeah.
5'8", 215.
Everyone acts like this is a tiny man. This guy is he's a bowling ball. Like, he's a problem to tackle. Yes. Like, yeah.
He's awesome.
I truly don't get it.
By the way. He's my Madden running back, by the way. I'm in the midst.
I might buy a system just to play with Jaylen Warren on Madden.
Oh, buddy, I'm a degenerate. I am. Here's how sick I am with all this stupid stuff. So the Saints are in cap hell, right? And they have that's a part of Madden, right? So you can start a franchise.
Is
with
it the cover?
team.
Is it just them? Like, oh,
yeah. It's Derek Carr cussing out one of his teammates on the cover. Or Dennis Allen, or a Dennis Allen interview where he says his player fucking sucks, during training camp again, because just every Dennis Allen clip is just like, well, what does A.T. Perry need to get better at? Fucking everything. He's like, have you watched him? He's like, did you watch him? He's like, why do you think we still have Taysom Hill? Because all these ass clowns suck. We need somebody who can just do a bunch of shit. No, but so I was like, you know what would be not fun for anybody, but apparently fun for me is, can I turn the Saints around into like a good team? I'm like, they're like 80 mil in the whole cap space wise.
This is risk seeking. This is pure risk.
This is why I drafted so much Rashad Penny. This is why I drafted so much Rashad Penny and Trey Lance. You're seeing behind the scenes where my old process.
Get it out in Madden, get it out in Madden.
It's still there a little bit, but I gotta get it out on the PS5, not with my money. But it's so bad, and I didn't really understand all the ramifications of every move I made, that I was so far in the hole, and I traded everybody away that I only had one quarterback after the first year. Jake Hayner, their third stringer, was my only quarterback. But I was like, I'm trading, Kamara, I'm trading all these guys, and I picked up Jaylen Warren, I picked up a bunch of draft picks and all that kind of stuff. But there's really no point to this other than to talk about how dark and twisted my brain is. But I think you would also see, I legitimately did not know how much Jaylen Warren weighed before that. And then I trade for him in Madden, and I'm like, Jesus, he is huge. I like you see him on the game.
He's 185 in the collective consciousness. I don't understand.
And I was like, how big is this dude? And exactly what I went and looked, and I was like, oh my God, he's bigger than Bijan. He's bigger than Bijan. He's like Brees, but smaller and more compact, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, and look, Warren has been very impressive over 2 years as a receiver, and he's coming off a very impressive rushing season. And he
was awesome at Oklahoma State in his last year too.
Yeah. So, and with we know that UDFAs at running back can hit in pretty big ways, especially when they're young. He's a third-year player. It's just as far as the talent, most of the pushback that I ever hear on Jaylen Warren is either stuff like, oh, he's small, which he isn't, or it's
he's short.
They're going to use Najee, dude. You don't get it. You don't understand what's going to happen. But what's going to happen is situation. And guess what? I don't know what's going to happen, and neither do you, because it's a long season. So I'm getting to bet on chaos when I take Jaylen Warren. I'm getting to take the player stand at a cheap price. Price per talent, Jaylen Warren, one of the best picks in the pool. That's, I feel extremely strongly about, and that's why I'm betting on him. Because and then what would make me not bet on Jaylen Warren is if it was Jaylen Warren was on a 1-year deal and he hadn't gotten any guaranteed money, and the rest of the NFL had kind of passed over him. And
okay, Rashad Penny's dead. Enough. Rashad Penny is dead. You're literally describing.
I'm describing Rashad Penny. I'm describing Ronald Jones, who I finally, I thought Ronald Jones was more talented than he is. That wasn't talent eval. I got a little too hyped on. Okay.
So something I want to talk about later around that. You were not wrong about his talent. You were wrong about he was talented in one specific. Let's use a Madden example. Players have traits.
Yeah.
Right. He's a man-to-man corner. Right. Darrelle Revis was a man-to-man lockdown corner, but maybe he's not as good playing cover 2 zone.
Yeah.
Right. Ronald Jones was an excellent runner, and in really all facets of the run game. Big play, run upside, physical, big power back, fast, all of that stuff. But running back is more than just being a good in between the tackles runner.
I think like his team meeting score might have been in the 20s. Like I don't,
Yeah.
coachability did not seem super high. There's stuff like that where like you just saw coaching staff. First of all,
Warren,
the very first coaching staff was out. He didn't play at all as a rookie. And then the funny thing with Ronald Jones, to defend myself a little, is the year that I was most in on him, he hit. And and
90-yard touchdown.
And that year, right, he was able to hit because, and this is, I guess, another reason I would bet on Warren, is that like, what do you need from running backs in this range? And, Jones that year in 2020 had enough job security at that point. It was later when he went to the Chiefs that he was a terrible pick. And I did that thing with him where I did the penny and then I stopped. Partly actually because of Rachaad White, who I was really into that year. I was like, I'm drafting Ronald Jones over Rachaad White. And like one of these players I'm not even sure is going to have a job. And one of them is a rookie who's going to get used down the stretch and is a receiver. And I get to bet against Leonard Fournette, which I love doing. So I'm taking Rachaad White and I'm going to stop taking Rojo so much. And then obviously the Pacheco steam started and Rojo, we realized, just was not going to play. And he was a terrible pick. So that, but if Warren had some of the Rojo like downside vibes, or even like, I don't know, the team doesn't seem to really like this guy that much.
Yeah.
Like Izzy, right? Izzy Abanikanda, like,
yeah,
I wouldn't take Izzy in a 26 round draft right now.
Yeah, it's over.
Like he's not making the team. It's very clear the way they're talking about him. Like I don't know why.
Isaiah Davis is getting reps with the ones. It's over.
It's over. It's
they need
over.
4. You need them to keep 4 running backs, and even then he needs 3 injuries.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like seems weird to me. He looked pretty good to me and he had a good prospect profile, but like the team is very clear. They're out. So I'm out. So that's what I would kind of like. I need stuff like that with Warren to where, because I think actually the floor is actually very high. And because he had, he's had a locked in role last year that he did very well in, and the team's going to have a lot of rushing volume and they're going to use both running backs quite a bit. Can he hit for me at pick 90 as the 1B back on the Steelers? Yep, he can. So I'm getting like all the upsides. So that's, to me, Warren is kind of the classic league winner profile. Jonathan Brooks would be the other guy in this range because you're getting the late season production. The production's back weighted. So even more for a rookie, we're getting a discount on the talent because of the torn ACL, which we should, but because he's a rookie, we're already using him for back weighted down the stretch production. That's kind of magnified, but it comes with a discount. He would be if he hadn't torn his ACL, second round pick on the Panthers, he'd be in the 5th round or 6th round, I think.
I was going to say 6th. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm taking that
Mixon.
discount.
Put him right after Mixon.
Right after Mixon. Like Mixon goes, you take Brooks.
Get the certainty of the offense and the projectable volume, and then move down to this offense might suck, but he's young and he has the projectable volume. Lump him there, but like you said, we get a big discount. We get Dave Canales in town, who turned Rachaad White into Rachaad White, and they clearly value him with a second round pick. Would you say what the Jaylen Warren thing is so perfect? And you used the word chaos, and I love the word chaos. And both of our friends, your co-host Ben Gretsch uses the word like chaos for the NFL season. And I feel like in terms of like finding league winners and upside, we talked about uncertainty, but chaos is maybe even more so what drives it than uncertainty. Jaylen Warren there's nothing really uncertain at all to me about Jaylen Warren.
Yeah.
But when we have the certainty of he's good and we know when chaos happens, we have a talented player who benefits from said chaos. Like, so people think about Kyron and Puka as examples of those, but we didn't know how good they were. But it can also, but we found out that they're very good. We found out that they benefited from chaos, which we're talking about with Warren, and they're very good at football. And they also happen to be in a good situation, to your situational comments. So they had all of those things. We just didn't know the talent level, right? So that's why the late round guys can happen and the rookies can happen, because we don't actually know how good they are. But it can also be Jaylen Warren. It can also be the guy who we know without a doubt, in my opinion, is good at football. We know without a doubt that if something chaotic happens for the Steelers, he's a likely beneficiary. So it can be as simple as good football player, benefit from chaos, league winner.
Yeah.
Right? I think it can be that simple.
I think it is often that simple. Yeah. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about Ronald Jones, so I don't get to do that much anymore. So in 2020, right, that's the year they signed Fournette, and it's like, okay, Fournette's going to come in. Ronald Jones fell quite a bit. The market was pretty certain that, it was going to be Fournette, not Jones. And Jones, you could kind of bet on to have like a good year, not an amazing year, and still be a pretty nice win for you, which is exactly what happened. He had 28 receptions, under 65 yards, and a touchdown that year, 978 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns.
He caught a receiving touchdown?
He caught a receiving touchdown. Yeah, the only one of his career in 2020. So, you got 13.6 PPR points per game. Not a bad little season to get out of that price range. The following year, this is actually the year that I screwed up. And this is a pretty bad screw up, and one that I want to kind of take a lesson from. And have tried to take lessons from. In 2021, he and Fournette were priced pretty much the same. And I took a ton of Jones and no Fournette. And there, I was not setting myself to benefit from chaos, right? The chaos is kind of like, I don't know, it could be either of these guys this year. And I was like, nope, I know who it is. It's my favorite player, Ronald Jones. And then it was Fournette that year. That was the year that you really did want to be on Fournette. He was a league winner that year. Because he was coming out of the 8th, 9th round, like he was a smash. So there is where, it's always about kind of what the market is pricing in, what it's not pricing in, and what it's, kind of implicitly saying about what the situation will be. And when you get down, kind of past the Jaylen Warren zone, and you're like, who is getting priced like we kind of, like basically like where is the market saying, I don't know, man. I would say one would be the Cardinals. The Cardinals, people are like, I don't know.
Yes.
James
Conner's been good, but they just drafted Trey Benson, so I don't know. I threw my hands up.
Yeah. So first I was like, you know what? I want Benson. Give me the rookie. This guy's fun. Man, he could take over the backfield down the stretch. Like I'm drafting a lot of Trey Benson. Not Conner though, because Conner's old. And then I was like, but Conner was good last year, and they drafted a third-round running back. Third-round running backs like don't really play that much all the time. And this offense is supposed to be better. I mean, they could be scoring points, and this like Conner could be the guy they're kind of leaning on to just like
Trey Benson could get hurt.
Trey Benson could get hurt.
We only say I do this. I take a lot more Trey. I had this exact epiphany the other day with James Conner. I take a ton of Trey Benson, and I was just like, veteran running backs aren't the only ones that get injured. Like Jonathan Brooks is coming off an ACL tear. It's like he was 20 years old and he tore his ACL. Guess what? Trey Benson could get hurt. And even if you were right that they wanted Trey Benson to ascend down the stretch, sometimes chaos, everything we're talking about with chaos, doesn't let that happen. And James Conner could be the league winner again in the 8th round for like the 5th year in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mostert's another guy where I'm like, what if, Achane misses time? What if Wright's no good and they just lean on Mostert? Like Conner and Mostert are two guys I kind of came back around on where I'm like, these guys are, there's actually the uncertainty of how the situation breaks out is why they're going here. And I should just mix them in, and then chaos. Like I am benefiting from chaos here, even though they're older players, doesn't feel as comfy. To me, it feels maybe comfier to some people, but to me, I'm like, oh, geez, this guy's kind of old.
It's easier for me to click Zeke than James Conner. It's easier for me to click. That's how uncomfortable it is.
Yeah. To me, the very best click on the board from the market's just like, I don't know, man. This situation seems a little uncertain. Is Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson is an absolute smash from the perspective of like, the market just being like, yeah, I don't know. The role seems kind of murky. I'm not sure if it's Robinson or Eckler. I am trying to take a little bit of Eckler occasionally so that but I think he's he's in a different place in his career than even Fournette was back in 2020, 2021, I think. So that he's not someone I generally click, but he has fallen now to the point where I will mix him a little.
It's also Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury and not
exactly.
Tom Brady. They're different bets.
The dump off bet is much harder to see paying off in a big way. But like, yeah, I mean, the Zach Moss, Chase Brown one, I would actually be an interesting one to talk about, because I guess it's possible I'm being too certain there. I'm not really taking Moss a ton now. Now he's up at 95. I'm like, it's probably better to just take Chase Brown. But is he the Fournette here? And am I being too certain there? Because I mean, if Chase Brown were to get hurt, like, oh my god,
I take a bunch of both. I take a bunch of both.
He needs to take a little more Moss.
I think this range is the I kind of mentioned it before with like the elite wide receivers, and like I don't necessarily agree with the ordering, or I have a preference between those guys. What I think that is, and where I'm trying to, like, you got to like check yourself on these things, because you talk about always like the human brain takes shortcuts, and we take shortcuts on our favorite players in the draft all the time. Like, if you're not specifically monitoring it and monitoring your portfolio and how much you've taken of X player versus Y player and the combinations and all that fun stuff, you'll just draft the same guys every single time.
You'll draft the same guys.
You just will. You'll take Jaylen Warren, just like you and I will. You'll take Jaylen Warren, and you'll take Chase Brown, and you'll take Brian Robinson. But we just outlined that chaos is the main driver, and especially at the running back position, is the main driver for upside. And I don't even want to say league winners, but like the guys who you really, really want this year in fantasy, and certainly in the fantasy playoffs and in week 17, the guys that we want it's going to be almost entirely driven by chaos, right? And if I can get the chaos plus the talent, that's when I get Kyron and Achane. But I'll also take James Conner, who I'm not he's fine. He's fine, but like you just read off earlier, the winning BBM team, James Conner benefited from, like, yeah, it's there. Guess what? Keontae Ingram sucks at football, so James Conner's going to get all the work. He benefited from us thinking it was chaotic, and actually it was just like it was chaos in a way that like these other guys suck, right? Not necessarily an injury and situation, whatever. But this range is my bread and butter, right? If I'm drafting almost exclusively zero running back, from Aaron Jones to Tyler Algier is like my.
You live here,
like, yeah.
This is where you live now.
I bought a house on this island here. Like that's where I'm living.
You're mayor, dude.
Yeah, dude. Like I get to come to the city council meetings, and Eckler is running them, and so I can't not take him because I talk to him frequently. But like that range, I'm literally saying chaos and this range of running backs, like because of said chaos, is going to win. And of course, the market with the early elite wide receivers is why I'm going to win. Why in the hell would I then also say, no, but I know which chaos is going to happen. Right?
Which chaos is going to happen. I love that.
It's like the weather thing. It's like we're making fun of people for week 17 weather takes. And then I'm going to say, no, I think this range is going to win because of chaos that's going to play out this year. But like, it's not chaos that helps Zach Moss. It's no, that's not the chaos, right? Chase Brown could never get hurt, right? Like Brian Robinson could never get hurt. Like I can deploy my portfolio in a way that I think I agree with every single one of the takes that you just said. I love Brian Robinson. I prefer Chase Brown to Zach Moss. I prefer Jaylen Warren to Najee Harris. I prefer whatever, Jonathan Brooks to Raheem Mostert.
Najee, by the way, pretty good pick. Good pick. I'm not taking him a ton because I take a lot of Warren, but he's a pretty good pick. Could benefit from chaos.
So take them all. That's what I'm trying to say is why would I make this harder on myself? I'm going to draft 1,000 teams, dude. Like I'm not like if you're going to draft 10 or 20 teams, take your guy. Like absolutely. Take your guys. If you're listening to a show with Sicko in the name about best ball in June, you're probably taking this pretty seriously and probably drafting a bunch of teams. So like, why would I, when my edge is this range benefiting from chaos, why would I make it harder on myself with the and say like, no. I know chaos is going to happen, but I know what chaos is going to happen. Like I don't know what that's going to be. So like I can say one guy's a better bet, but I don't want to like, there can be better bets and they can, I can still want the other also good bets. Eckler is nowhere near the same good bet as Brian Robinson. My portfolio will dictate as such, but he's not a 100% and a 0%. The bet
Exactly.
That's not how the math works.
Yeah. No, that's, and I think that's also a difference from redraft, where like you can zero out a player in redraft.
100%.
You can. You're doing 12 leagues, maybe, if you're a grinder. That's a lot to manage. So 12 leagues, I mean, you're not going to have every player. There's no way. So, I mean, what would be the point if you have every player and you only have 12 leagues? Like, what's wrong with you?
Seems like a bad investment. Look, I'm not a stockbroker, but that feels like a pretty bad.
I think you just
strategy.
lost whatever the rake was. Because that's not going to work. I don't think.
Congratulations on one win and a bunch of 6th place and a few last place teams. Like
your edge is combining the player pool in different ways, maybe.
But he got to put in his Twitter bio, like 1-1 FFPC main event regular season championship or whatever.
In parentheses, 12 entries.
It's like the advance rate. It's like if we brag about advance rate, it's like I advanced, double expectations. Like, did you win money? Well, no, I didn't win money. It's like, well, then who gives a fuck how many teams you advance? It's like I won one main event regular season. It's like how much money?
I think it's worse than the advance rate.
I lost. It's way worse. I lost 10 grand, but don't worry about it.
Don't worry about that part. Yeah. So the high stakes stuff, or the just regular redraft stuff or whatever, like traditional managed leagues, like you're just not taking a lot of the players. You're just not, and you're like, look, I know this player could hit, and I'm betting I'll survive it. And I think you can bet on that to a degree in best ball. There's probably a couple players I don't draft at all, but I will draft far more players in best ball than I will in redraft. And then I would in redraft, even if I were to do 50 best ball teams and 50 redraft teams, I would draft a lot more players in the best ball portfolio than I would in the redraft portfolio, because I'm a little bit more open-minded to lower ceiling archetypes, like we talked about with Josh Downs. Yep. But also, like, I don't know if I'll survive it. Like, I want a little taste of some of these running backs that I think could be decent, bets. They're not the best bets in my mind, but they're decent enough. Like, in best ball, I will have more Najee Harris than I will have in a redraft. I just will. Mm-hmm. And it's not really a ceiling thing. It's a humility thing. Like, I don't think Najee Harris is a great pick. I don't think he's a bad pick. But in best ball, fine pick is someone I will take. In redraft, yeah, I could see it. You're rarely taking that guy.
Yep. What do you think about the humility angle from an offense perspective? It's something that's been top of mind for me, that we talk about that with these players a lot from and again, we're trying to find like league winners and such. It's not always the players that we love the most. I mean, I just mentioned James Conner. He hasn't been a player I've loved since best ball has been around, and I've been wrong every single year, and he just keeps dunking on me. So I'll take him this year, and
then he'll be terrible.
Yeah, it's Trey Benson, but that's why I'm taking Trey Benson. But like, I do think we are more willing, as if we've certainly you and I, and probably people listening to this, not everybody, but people are more willing to say, yeah, I could be wrong about Keon Coleman. It's certainly possible. I think this is ridiculous what we're doing with him, but the Bills liked him. I get it. But we're very infrequently willing to do that with like our team and offense and like pass rates and like all that kind of stuff. And I feel like from an upside and league winner perspective, that can come from there as well. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the Tampa Bay Bucks and Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. It was, of course, Rachaad White just being, a solid NFL football player. And then, of course, last year getting a workhorse role and all of that. But like, if he played for the Patriots or whatever last year, he wouldn't have been a league winner. It was also because the Tampa Bay Bucks were like significantly better than we ever expected. I mean, they made the playoffs. They scored a bunch of points. Mike Evans was incredible for fantasy, right? We do that every year. We do the who is this year's Kyron Williams, but then we also do the who is this year's offense that, from the year before, right? We Seahawks, Bucks, right? Texans.
Credit to I wasn't really in on the Bucks, but the Bucks of the Seahawks crew was exactly, they just
nailed
it.
Yeah. How come we victory lap everything? Where are those people? Where are the Bucks
take a
this
bow.
year's Seahawks? Yes, you deserved a victory lap. And we victory lap all the bullshit, and we don't victory lap. That one was like spot on. But like that, I feel like is also a pretty big factor into it, where the market gets very certain of which offense, right? All the Texans are going very high, as I think they should, but we're very certain that they're going to be awesome on offense. Whereas we think the Patriots stink, and we think the Broncos stink, and we think the Saints stink, and et cetera, which in turn is like the chaos thing. Like chaos can be, no, Baker and the Bucks are just like good on offense, and thus Rachaad White becomes amazing for fantasy. So like, what do you think about the team level side of, because I agree with the humility thing, but we can't only apply it to like our player evals.
It's a great point. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of so much of doing best ball, I think it is really helpful to have played, and to continue to play other formats of fantasy. This is one where it feels kind of like DFS, where you're like, if someone was just like, listen, no one will be stacking the Bucks this week. The Bucks will not be. You can get Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rachaad White, and Baker Mayfield for they're cheap. Their salaries are they fit, and no one's playing them.
Right. You want to play Christian McCaffrey against the Commanders? I got a stack for you. My good friend Jordan Cooper calls them vomit stacks.
Yeah, vomit stacks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're getting vomit stacks. And Mike Leone's he takes down I think he took down the Thunderdome with Ben Roethlisberger in his final season or something disgusting like that.
Yep.
Cousins.
He won one this year with Cousins, Jefferson, or no, maybe it was 2 years ago. Cousins, Jefferson, Thielen, Dalvin, Conklin, like all of these losers. Just disgusting. Like there's one good player and a half-assed decent quarterback on the whole list, and he won 50 grand or whatever.
So you're the vomit stacks. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The market is letting us have vomit stacks in best ball. The Broncos and the Patriots are the two ones that are fully available. Not just the quarterbacks.
Team. Yeah.
The whole team. The whole team's available. Now there's a couple more. You could say that the Titans, you can, you got to pay a little extra for Ridley and Hopkins. Grab one, I would say Hopkins. But you can get the running backs cheaply. You can tackle on a Boyd. So it's not like as clean where you just grab the whole thing.
Chig is cheap.
Yeah. So you can kind of do it with not entirely, but you can kind of do it with the Commanders, right? You can grab McLaurin, 10th round pick or whatever for Daniels, and then the rest of the offense is behind.
Cheaper Saints with a more expensive quarterback, I think, is what the Commanders are, right? McLaurin is cheaper than Olave, but Daniels is more expensive than Carr, and then everything else kind of evens itself out a little bit.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. And I take a decent amount of Carr because you can kind of Shaheed is cheap, Juwan Johnson's cheap, so you're getting that part of the stack. I do a little bit with the Bucks where you can get K-Dot and McMillan plus Baker's available cheaply. I think this is a big part of what I'm trying to do this year is actually these kind of vomit stacks, because you're getting the late. I mean, frankly, the Browns as well. You can do the Browns one pretty easily.
Forced myself. I've forced myself with the Browns. It sucks, but if similar to all this other stuff, they're cheap.
They're cheap. So and I think in DFS, one of the things that you get used to that generally is not a fun thing at first. You get used to letting everyone else tell you who you're going to play. Right? And I don't mean listening to a podcast where someone's play this guy. I mean, everyone else picks out what they are going to do. You're kind of you're hanging back, and you're everyone else is going up to the table and they're picking out all their stacks and all their stuff. And then you're going, okay, So that's how you're going to play this. All right, let me come in. And now I see by everything you guys are doing, now I see a path that I wouldn't have picked just if I was first to go down to the table and grab whatever I wanted, wouldn't have been what I grabbed. But you guys have left over this incredible, I don't even know what analogy I'm really drawing, but that you've left over something or created a path through your selections that very clearly provides upside to me. And that's not as fun as just being like, I know which teams are going to score a bunch of points and I'm going to draft them, but like when you get down to these late stacks, like now it helps that I really like Drake May. So I'm in on the Patriots one easily, but I'm not like that into Bo Nix. And you're leaving me like Sutton is very cheap, and then you can grab Mims and Franklin. I'm taking both of them in kind of the same way we talk about the running back chaos. Like, I don't know, maybe one of these guys is good. Maybe they're both good. I have no idea, but I'm mixing them in. And you can get, obviously Javonte is very, very affordable. We didn't mention him in that range, but I'm taking Javonte. I'm taking Jaleel McLaughlin. Is we get like a little bit more certainty about the RB3 because I think it's a rotation. Maybe. Yeah, maybe I'll take some Estime. Maybe I'll take some P. Ryan if he makes the roster or whatever. But like you're mixing in that.
When Blake Watson makes the roster, I'll also draft Blake Watson.
Maybe I'll take some Blake Watson for real. So
he's the next Alvin Kamara, don't you know? I'm not going to comp it. I love the coach quotes, Sean Payton. I'm not going to comp him to Alvin Kamara, but here's every statistical detail and character trait he has. That's
and it kind of looks like
the same as Alvin.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you for not comping him to Alvin.
Thanks for not comping him, like you said you wouldn't. But like, Bo Nix, it reminds me of DFS, the Bo Nix stuff, where the market's like, we just don't care. And you're like, hang on, you're letting me stack this guy who's going to be playing at the end of the season, be playing the whole season. So I can show up to week 17 with a guy who's actually helped me get there. And I have a bunch of cheap correlated pieces with him where like, if one of them goes for 24 and it's tied to the quarterback and another guy goes for 19, I'm feeling pretty good. I know I'm going to need to hit some other stuff. That's not enough.
You have
that's
all your
pretty
option
good.
Dollars to find the other stuff. You got all of that for pennies
for nothing.
On the dollar. Yep.
For nothing. Yeah. Think about the salary that cost me in terms of a DraftKings lineup. Like nothing. Like I just loaded so many points into my roster for very little salary. And, if you're down here doing the Broncos thing, like no one really messes with you. You can kind of get your Broncos. No one's like
getting sniped. If you hate getting sniped, draft the Broncos. You're never gonna.
You don't get sniped when you try to scoop the Broncos. The room lets you,
and they laugh at you while you do it.
Yeah. And the other nice thing about the Broncos is they're playing the Bengals. So like I like to go. I'm going to push Burrow. I have Chase. I'm going to push Burrow. The Higgins guys on the other side of the room. I'm going to push Burrow around this turn. I'm going to get squeeze that extra little value out of Burrow before he has to go past the Higgins guy again. And if he gets sniped, well, now there's another unstacked Burrow team in the pool. So maybe as a high volume drafter, that's nice for me. But if he gets sniped, you play it from the other side. And there's a bunch of situations like that where you can just kind of use the late round quarterbacks to play stuff from the other side where you got sniped on the earlier quarterback. And I like these late round quarterbacks a lot. Like I think they could be, to me, this is a much more enticing way to play this season than the late round quarterbacks were last year because I feel much better about their job security than this season.
Yeah. You're just a Sam Howell hater, but we don't need to relitigate. We don't need to. I am gonna love. We don't need to get into the Jacoby Brissett thing today, but I'm very excited for
I'm just picturing you sitting down. You're putting on Red Zone, a big old fucking grin on your face as Jacoby Brissett lines up under center. It's week 5. You're like, oh yeah, come on, keep playing well, Jacoby.
I think you did that. We are literally living. I'm living your life from last year with less money in my bank account, and you're living my life from last year. I've been drafting a ton of the Superflex. I feel like there's a huge edge in the Superflex puppy on Underdog, and I'm taking a bunch of Brissett in there, and I'm pretty sure you did that. I'm pretty sure you did that in the Superflex last year. So it's so good. It's so good. Like we literally in the Superflex last year, I had like 80% Hal and you had like 60% Brissett. And then now like you probably have 80% May and I have all the Brissett. It's just like you couldn't make this shit up if you tried.
Good.
It is
it's so good.
It is so good. But so to be serious, the cheap stack thing is like DFS is in my opinion the easiest example to like explain how powerful it is. And like even think about it like a totally just straight up example of how it could work. If I told I am a vomit stacker in DFS. I actually think it's like a significant there's not a lot of edges in NFL DFS anymore. These guys who are winning all the money every Sunday, they're pretty fucking good at this. They're better at it than I am. Where I think I can win at least a couple times over the course of the season, which is kind of what we're talking about in best ball, is when Desmond Ridder plays better than Desmond Ridder on a particular Sunday, or maybe he's not playing better, but right, the statistical output that we expect from Desmond Ridder, he actually has that 30-point game, which he did last year, by the way. I also faded the Falcons on that week because they were kind of popular, but that's neither here nor there. But Desmond Ridder has that big game, and Drake London has that big game, but they're priced down because they had so many bad games in a row, right? Desmond Ridder sub 5K on DraftKings, which for anybody that knows at quarterback is insane. Like Josh Allen's 8,000. He's like half price of what you're paying for Josh Allen.
The cheap running back for a quarterback price.
Right. Drake London goes from a 7K wide receiver to like 4,800 because he's just doing nothing for so many times. So you get that. Maybe you even have whoever, right? Somebody on the game shoots out. You have somebody on the other side who's also cheap. You spent so little that you can afford Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey and Travis Kelce and whatever on that team. And like, think about having like elite scores from min-priced players on DraftKings, and then having the single greatest like Hall of Famers. Like the rest of your team is Hall of Famers around them. The power of that is like you can't find that upside through anything else. And so if you take that over to best ball and you say, I'm not even talking about 1 week, I'm talking about the whole, I can benefit from that in 1 week with CJ Stroud and Tank Dell and Nico Collins being, and Dalton Schultz being better in one individual week, but I get to compound that interest. I get to say, oh, no. They actually weren't $4,500 quarterbacks. They were $7,000 quarterbacks. But we only had to pay $4,500 for them, and I can use that for 17 weeks. Now that isn't always going to happen, and they're not always going to go from 4,500 to 7,000. They might go from 4,500 to 5,800 or 6,500 or something like that. But like that's really valuable because also if we know that the offense is just better, almost all these guys are going to be too cheap, right? They're almost all going to be too. So it's the rising tide situation that happens with all of these offenses. And I always used to like to talk about in DFS, like what's the cleanest path, right? There's a lot of, you mentioned like Josh Jacobs, like there are ways you could win with Josh Jacobs. It's just not the easiest. It's not the cleanest path. When I'm trying to get from point A to point B, I want it to be just take me on a straight line. What's the easiest way for me to get there? That's the cleanest path. The cleanest path to me is just like, I don't know. The market's just wrong about this thing.
Yeah.
Like the Broncos.
About this team. This team.
One team. They just said this one team fucking sucks. They suck so bad. We don't want any of these dudes.
They care suck how so good bad that they're not going to win any games and also not going to score any points while losing games.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a precise bet. Like that's.
And not score.
Are you sure? We don't play in like points per win league. I don't need the Broncos to win a bunch of games. I need them to score points, or not even points, fantasy points. They don't need to score that many touchdowns.
The fucking Commanders were awful. absolutely awful. They had the second worst record in the league. And Sam Howell scored a shit ton of fantasy points. Brian Robinson scored a shit ton of fantasy points. Terry McLaurin, once Jacoby Brissett got in the game, scored a shit ton of fantasy points. Like the Panthers had Adam Thielen, who was literally putting me in an early grave for half of a season on the worst team and worst offense in the NFL. Chuba Hubbard was scoring.
Dude, we're really lucky
points.
Bryce Young isn't good, because that would have.
Dude, there is a.
Or is that a symptom of him not being good? Actually,
yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, a little. Yeah, there's correlation there for sure. There, some folks in the Spike Week Discord have coined a phrase that I particularly love for multiple different reasons. Of guys, you mentioned earlier about like we're applying humility to all these different things, but there can still be guys, particularly in redraft, you were saying, but like it applies in basketball too. There can be guys where like, no, he's a bad bet. There is no nuance to this. I want zero of him. Type situations. It's rare, but there are some of those. They have coined it the Thielen list. Who's on your Thielen list? Because that's what we were saying. We were mocking everyone that took Adam Thielen last year, and he was a ha, you're an idiot for taking him. I'm gonna draft him 0%. And he just, for half a season, it turned out fine not drafting him, but it looked real bad.
It looked bad for a minute. Yeah.
It looked really bad. But like the Panthers, yet again, are this situation, right? We're talking about like, what if they're just better, right? What if it was, they didn't have enough talent around Bryce? And what if bringing in Brooks and drafting Leggett and drafting Jatavian Sanders and bringing in Deontay Johnson means like, oh, no, it was the situation for Bryce Young and for these guys. And now they're better, right? Add all these guys to the list and you say, I only need one thing. I need that one thing to be right, and the market's going to be wrong, and I can benefit on like 25% of my best ball team. Yeah. That seems like a really easy and fun way to win.
Yeah, and like, so Pete Overzett's Week 17 is All That Matters video from a couple years ago obviously got us all on Week 17 correlation, but one part of it is really stuck in my mind, which he shares this team that finished 7th place in BBM 2. And the team had Devontae Adams when he was on the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
AJ, so he took Devontae Adams, then AJ Dillon, Aaron Rodgers, Robert Tonyan, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, Amari Rodgers, and Alan Lazard. So he went full onslaught. 7 different Packers in that game. I forget who they played. Did they play the Vikings that year?
Vikings. No.
Yeah, might because they played the Vikings like every year.
So Pete shared that team because Pete and I finished 8th in that. So he found that team edged us out. We also had Devontae Adams and MVS on our team. I
didn't realize you guys finished 1 spot behind this team.
1 spot behind. Thank you for calling it out, though. I'm not still triggered by it at all.
I mean, 8th place is fucking pretty sweet.
It was, Vikings. Do the Packers and Vikings play Week 17 every
time? They play the Vikings every time. Yeah. No, that's I was like, I'm pretty sure it's just always the Vikings.
Cousins was hurt. It was, I'm pulling up the box score, so I'm stalling for time. It was Sean Mannion at quarterback for the Vikings in that game, and he got benched for Kellen Mond.
He took Madison, this guy, so he had 8 players from that game. I think there's probably really minus EV ways to take 8 players from that game, from one game. That would probably be if it was your first 8 picks, not super smart. If you took both quarterbacks early, from the same game, that would probably
Did Lazard hit this guy's lineup? Lazard must have hit this.
Probably.
He had.
You probably have this, can you pull up, or was it? I don't know. There's probably a way to find that out.
Yeah. Before I do it, I'm just pulling up the box score. So this was that game. This also, you want to talk about chaos? This is a great example of chaos. Sean Mannion, as you see, and Kellen Mond. Dalvin Cook had 9 carries for 13 yards, which is kind of hilarious. And Devontae went nuts in that game, and Lazard was okay. And that was about it.
What did Lazard do? He had
6 for 72 and a touchdown.
I bet he hit the lineup.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean,
16 points.
And then AJ Dillon didn't really. No, AJ Dillon had 2 rushing touchdowns.
2 touchdowns. Yeah. So
wow.
he got. I don't know if he used Rodgers. Probably not. But AJ Dillon, Devontae Adams, and Alan Lazard probably all from his. What would you say? 8 players from this game. He got 3 starters.
8 players from this game. Yeah, he got 3 starters. If you are, one of those starters would have come from his 16th round pick, and Alan Lazard.
Right.
That's pretty good. If you're giving me a starter out of the 16th round, not only is that really helpful, but like generally the way these things have gone, like you almost need that. It's sort of like checking a box of like spike week from the final rounds. If you're like, how do I actually win these things? Spike week from the final rounds would be a box that I would want to be checking. And so to get that out of this stack alone is big. Then the big Devontae Adams. Another box would be one of my first 2 picks goes absolutely nuts. So you get Devontae, a running back, scores a couple touchdowns somewhere in the middle to early double-digit rounds. AJ Dillon, so it's
AJ
pretty
Dillon
good.
There. It was James Conner. It was James Conner last year as agent. Yeah. It's this is nice. We need to create this checklist because it's. I think every winner has
There's like a legitimate checklist. Yeah, it might be kind of an interesting way to look at it. But it's like, he checked off 3 things here. The Rodgers one. I don't know if let's see, his other quarterback. I don't know if he had another quarterback. Did he not have another quarterback? That seems insane. I'm not seeing one though. No, Joe Burrow. I was blanking on. My eyes are closing on Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow, he had double stacked with Chase and Higgins. So my guess is that Burrow hit his lineup. But the fact that Rodgers didn't hit his lineup, right? So you did this stack. You get Adams, you get Dillon, you get Lazard, all hitting your lineup simultaneously. Maybe you don't even draft Rodgers.
Right.
Maybe you don't even draft Rodgers. This is the stack without the quarterback thing that I think is so big. Like, I don't always take May. Sometimes I still stack the Patriots without May because I have like Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. I'm not taking May. There's no point. Mm-hmm. So I go ahead and but I do like, those offenses. You get Burton, right? You get Palmer a little earlier. You could take Quentin Johnston. But when you get into the final rounds of the draft, I mean, I guess you could take like Vidal, although I'm starting to get increasingly nervous that he's nothing.
He just happens to be also we're hitting on all the things that I talked about with someone else this morning. So this is nice because I don't have to think too hard. If he gets any more expensive, he'll definitely be off the board. I called Tyler Algier like the 0 RB Bateman line, where like once Tyler Algier is gone, like I also said this, like if you want to include Antonio Gibson, I'm not going to really argue with you. I think.
What about Bucky? Can we include Bucky?
I think you can. I think you can include. I would be fine.
See the Jacoby Myers of this debate.
Yes, Bucky is Jacoby Myers and Algier is Bateman. It's like I think he's fine, but like,
but there was a tier break before we got here.
There was still
he's just sort of the remaining.
He's like maybe his own tier, but
right.
If Vidal, so like once you get beyond the Bateman line, I'm like, whatever. If I need a running back, it's fine. I'll do it. But like, I'm not excited about it. But like, what tangibly is the difference between Kamani Vidal and Bucky and the Bears guys and Donta Foreman? And it's like, they're all shitty bets, like at varying levels. I think Bucky is a little bit better bet. I think a couple other guys are a little bit better bets. But at the end of the day,
there's been a tier break.
They're dollar auction players, maybe $2. Yeah. So like, who really give? Like, I don't really give a shit. If he gets into my $4 auction players, he can fuck right off. You know what I mean? Like, stay away from my Algier, Ty Chandler, Kendre, Ray Davis.
Yeah.
Stay out of that one. But as long as you're next to Khalil Herbert and Bucky, like it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and to be clear, like on this team, I'm not saying this guy shouldn't have drafted Rodgers. He took 2 quarterbacks. One of them was Rodgers, perfectly. I mean, it's a great build. But the thing I would say is like in this example, we have Burrow and Herbert, and you get to it's like I'm starting to get lukewarm on Vidal. Neither of these guys really have tight ends I'm dying to take. I mean, certainly you could take Gesicki or something, but that's not. There's just no one to scoop. Now on the other side, though, if I've got Justin Herbert, I could also scoop a bunch of the Patriots without May and building them back as Week 17 stacks on the Chargers, or I could do the Broncos and not draft Bo Nix and just take a ton of the Broncos at the end, and get some of the Week 17 correlation that way. But I'm also getting a stack. I'm getting just a stack on a team. Broncos have a really good Week 15. Maybe that's why I make the final. Patriots have a really good Week 16. Maybe that's why I make the final, right? So that's a really nice part of it. Or like the Patriots don't go nuts against the Chargers, but they do some stuff. Antonio Gibson scores a couple touchdowns, and Hunter Henry scores a couple touchdowns. Like Hunter Henry scores a couple touchdowns. I think he's going in the lineup. That's so. Anyway, you're like able to with those two teams. Like you don't even have to take their quarterbacks. You can just scoop a bunch of the players as bringbacks, potentially, or even as not bringbacks, and just like an additional stack, an additional correlated bet. I think look, I don't want to say it's definitely the Broncos and the Patriots. If you're like, no, it's this, but the Saints, it's this, but the Panthers. Great. I happen to have landed on these other two teams as the main ones that I'm betting on. If you're like, I'm going to switch this idea to these other teams that provide a similar bet, but, on ones that are actually going to hit, and these guys are wrong about which teams are going to hit, do it. That's a great idea. That's, I think that's it's one of the cleanest paths, as you said before. Like we're looking for clean paths to scoring a ton of points, making a final that's very, very hard to do, and scoring a ton of points in that final. Like this is one of the cleanest paths.
So another clean path. I got two more things. I do have to. One of the pups has to go to the vet this afternoon, so we can't make this a 4-hour one. I'm not time constrained yet, but for the folks are probably like, "What do you mean? We're an hour and 45 minutes in. This means you guys are just getting started."
Well, I'm forced to take his dog to the vet on Monday, so we gotta start wrapping this up.
We gotta wrap in the next 36 hours or 72 hours or whatever. But I do have. I'm saying this because I have a couple more things I want to get to, and I'm a rambler, as you guys obviously know. Something again. So I'm gonna shout. You have a phenomenal Discord, and the Spike Week Discord. Like sometimes I'll be honest with you, I get ideas from these people. Like they're talking best ball literally 24/7, 365, and they're talking strategy. They're posting teams. They're asking questions. And somebody, I think it was his name's Updog in there. Which is funny in and of itself, but he's a really good best ball player. And I believe it was him that posted. We were talking about, I have weird things that bother me. It's not a lot of the things that bother other people. Like people get annoyed by some things, and I'm like, why are you getting worked up about that? And then when people say like, this is this year's Kyren Williams, that bothers me.
They have similar profiles.
Yeah, it's like he profiles exactly like Kyren Williams. Like you hit every one of my buttons there, buddy. So like I get irked. There is no like every time we do the who's this year's league winner, there isn't one, right? It's a different. It's a
different thing.
It's always different, which is why I think the conversation today was awesome because we're just trying to lead you down the path to finding the right guys, not trying to say here's this year's Kyren Williams, even though it's Kendre Miller. But he said, but the
pretty good one.
Leading into Kendre Miller, he was saying, what was an interesting part that is kind of like not discussed about Kyren and actually about Puka as well is a little bit this vomit stack or this cheap offense, but it's kind of like a middle ground, like a hero vomit stack where we don't really think the offense is completely horrible, but we give all of the projection to one player. Mm-hmm. And that was the Rams last year. Cooper Kupp is a top 5 pick. He's a superstar, but he's the only Ram we give a shit about. Right? I know we can argue about the Cam Akers.
This is the Saints. Yeah, like this is the Saints.
This is the Saints. We say Chris Olave is awesome. And I'm drafting Chris Olave. But once you get past Chris Olave, you're like, we got a dead zone back mixed in there. And then like, a double-digit round wide receiver, Van Jefferson. And like Shaheed's better than that, of course. But like, and then like a late round, route running tight end, Juwan versus Tyler Higbee, and a cheap pocket passing quarterback. And like, really, like, other than that expensive guy, that expensive wide receiver, like, the offense is shit. We don't care. We're just giving it all to the superstar. And like, on one hand, of course, the superstar, we're kind of doing that with CeeDee Lamb, by the way. But like, on one hand, like, we're giving all the projection to the superstar, and the superstar has earned it. But like, what happens when chaos breaks out in that situation? It's like, if there's a talented player alongside that guy, you want to talk about a league winner. We got two of them on the same offense with the Rams. There was a little bit of weird running back chaos, of course, to help Kyron get there. But we found two cheap players on a situation like that where it was like, they're good, they're cheap, and all we did was care about Cooper Kupp. And if anybody else besides Cooper Kupp is good, or Cooper Kupp gets hurt, which both of those things happened last year, you have a gold mine. It's an absolute gold mine. And so I thought that was really astute, like a really good call out, where it's like, the market isn't necessarily down on this offense. They're not high on it, but they're like, we know it's just this one guy, and the rest of them we really don't give a shit about. So what happens when the other guys are good? What happens when Kendre Miller is good? What happens when Rashid Shaheed is good, or A.T. Perry is good, or
is this a puke and rally? A puke and rally stack?
Yeah, I like this. Puke and rally. Yes, this is a puke and rally. 100%. You went way too hard at the pregame. You went really hard at the pregame, and you were, everybody else is at the urinals, and you're puking, and they're pissing. But the second half, you bounced back, right? You bounced back for the second half of the game. Yeah, that's my college tailgate.
Yeah, this is just a memory now. You stopped doing a metaphor entirely.
That actually did not happen to me. So if my wife listens to this, I promise that was not a real story.
I've been trying to figure out, like, because we talked about the chaos, and at running back, like, we want to set ourselves up to benefit from chaos. That's not really what we're doing with the Cowboys running backs. It's the vomit stack move that we're doing this is the puke and rally, as you said. I mean, we're kind of doing that with CeeDee Lamb. Like, you can scoop a lot of cheap Cowboys. Ferguson's not cheap, but he's not insanely expensive. Dak's not super cheap, but he's not like an elite quarterback priced that way. He's not going next to Stroud.
At least a tier behind, and especially if you drafted CeeDee Lamb,
you can push him a little,
as or you see someone else who drafted CeeDee Lamb. You see where they're on the board. Dak has maybe one of the widest ranges of ADP of anybody.
And the Cowboys, right? I think they're an interesting one, where if you had to stack them without Dak, you could, you tie some pieces to see, because you're betting on CD. It's going to flow through CeeDee Lamb, but you're betting on some other guys kind of coming along for the ride, and maybe it's the running back. Maybe it's not even related to Dak. So you're just kind of getting to bet on the offense. So that's a really good one. I also like, with Dak, pushing Dak. I mean, you can push, like, I had the chance to take Dak, and I took Ferguson, and I was like, I'm going to get the double.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did get the double, but I was, sometimes you won't. Sometimes that'll get blown up, and it's going to be annoying. But if it did get blown up, I'm still taking Zeke and Dowdle. Mm-hmm. Maybe not both without Dak, but I think, like, I'm willing to take both of these guys, actually, in the same way that you're just like scooped. Like, that team had Amari Rodgers and Marcus Valdes-Scantling and Allen Lazard. Like, one of those guys was not hitting the lineup, but he's basically like, I'm trying to hit a single here, And then on my team, I had Sony Michel when he was on the Dolphins, and Raheem Mostert. I'm trying to hit a single. It was my 16th and 17th round picks. I'm trying to hit a single, right? Actually, kind of hit a double with Mostert. But, like, I'm willing to burn a roster. Like, basically, I am kind of sacrificing a roster spot, but I'm doing it in a way that should help funnel value into this other really cheap roster spot. So I think the Cowboys running backs are priced low enough where we can actually do that. Where we can say, now I don't want to I'm not doing it in a 7 running back build. I'm doing it specifically so that I can stop at 5. It's like I'm getting that roster spot back, because I'm taking Ross' spot. I'm sort of kind of half burning it, but I'm like, I mean, you could stop at well, not 4. You could, but they're essentially you're using a 5 running back build to create the kind of
to create a hyper fragile team.
Or to create a hyper fragile team. Yeah, I mean, you could go Brees, James Cook, Jaylen Warren, Zeke Dowdle. I'm done. I'm not taking another running back. And then you have that extra roster spot, and you can. But I mean that they have to be pretty cheaply priced. But you're getting a whole backfield, and your first pick is like 125.
Right. Buying. We've coined that as well. Buying a backfield. And is there basically people would call it handcuffing, but I think it's not so much handcuffing. I'm not that interested in the handcuffs. I am interested in the ambiguous situations that are cheap.
Right.
And the Cowboys, I mean, the Cowboys are the best example. It's not even particularly close. We know the offense is at least not going to stink. I don't know how elite it's going to be, but it's not going to be bad, right? They're not going to be the Panthers of last year. And I can buy the whole backfield. And like the other thing about that is, again, in best ball, there are situations you win that aren't just one guy like is a 0 and one guy is really useful. It's so much more nuanced than that. And actually the most likely scenario is not that. The most likely scenario is like, it is ambiguous. They are both playing. So, Dowdle got a touchdown this week. Zeke is actually the starter, right? We do the starter thing. These are all my weird quirks that I've acquired in best ball, right? When people like, well, he's the starter. And it's like, yeah, but like CMC is a starter and also Zeke is a starter. They are not the same. This is not the same thing, right? Like this isn't Madden. I'm a lot of Madden references today. This isn't Madden where like the only time Jaylen Warren comes off the field for me is when he's too tired in Madden. It's not how real football works. Like it's probably going to be, like Najee and Jaylen Warren. It's like 60-40 or something like that. Right. And and then like even the value of the 40 can actually sometimes be more valuable than the 60. Right. Like Achane wasn't playing that many snaps. He didn't have snap share, a huge share of the situation. But the value of his touches is higher. The value of Jaylen Warren's touches are very high. So anyway, I think if you buy the Cowboys at, like you said, a 12th and 13th round pick, 11th and 13th round pick, 11th and 12th. And especially if
sometimes you do it it's the 12-13 turn, and I'm just going.
And you're done at running back, or you've just built in like, I know I'm getting the Cowboys running back situation. I think that's fine, and I think that 2 years ago I would have told you you're a fucking idiot for doing that. And so like we've evolved.
Cowboys running back. You're getting Cowboys running back for the cost of
Tony Pollard at the 2-3 turn last year, as we should, and I thought he was too cheap. I thought he was underpriced at the 2-3 turn, and now I can get the Cowboys guy because the names are disgusting. Because we're uncomfortable with the names, I can get that. I can pay what do you think that is? $4 auction dollars for that. 5.
Let's say the 11th and the 12th, right? So let's say at the 11-12 turn. It might be more like a total cost of 9.
Yeah, 8, 9.
8. Yeah. Something like that. Like they're each probably $4. What last
40,
year?
45.
Yeah.
Up on your
room.
Like
40. Yeah, between 40 and 45, I'd say.
And so we can get it. I'm not saying
for like $9.
Replicate. Yeah. So let's just call it 10. I can get it for 25. Right. It's a 75% off sale
on Cowboys running back.
On Cowboys running back, and the production is less than 100%. I'm not expecting them to produce.
Yeah, we expect less out of Cowboys running back this year for sure.
Yes, but not 75% less, right? It's not. That's again, the math doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm doing this at the even like the 9-10 turn. I think I'm out on this. This is that's a lot. Now that feels a lot.
I don't do the Steelers.
Because also, I don't do the Steelers. I did do the Steelers once though, because I got Warren where he normally goes, and then I got Najee at like pick 103.
Yeah.
So I did that. I think that's okay.
Will you do Moss, Chase Brown? Because Chase Brown's that
I
one's like really
haven't.
borderline for me because Chase Brown is cheaper than Warren, right? Najee and Moss are close, but also Warren's like close enough to Moss,
Right.
whereas Chase Brown's a couple rounds later.
I haven't done that one, but I could see it. I could see Bengals running back looking back and being like, yeah, pick 95 and pick 110. You know, the combined cost of that, which is probably $14 or
Yeah, so add $5 or something.
$13. Yeah, add $5. It's probably $15 for Bengals running back seems
For
pretty
the Bengals,
good.
the Bengals running back situation is not too dissimilar from the Cowboys running back situation. It's like that's the thing that gets lost in the Kyren thing probably is like it's not just Kyren's archetype. You mentioned before, like the talent was definitely, talent is important, particularly in the early rounds. The talent was important for Kyren, but we know he's not like a superstar. His situation did matter. If Kyren Williams was on the Carolina Panthers, we would not have gotten. He was on the Rams. He was on Sean McVay's offense. He was on Matthew Stafford's offense. He was in a situation where Sean McVay does prefer to lean on one individual running back, right? We talked about Josh Jacobs and Matt LaFleur not wanting to do that if at all possible. So it's multiple different elements, and the Bengals are one of those. Like the Rams, Bengals, Cowboys, Arthur Smith offenses, which is the Steelers now, right? There's a bunch of them, but like there are certain backfields that are more valuable than other backfields if the chaos, again using our chaos theme, if the chaos plays out in your way.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think we want to completely throw out the talent thing here too. Why am I a little bit more nervous about the Bengals one than the Steelers one? I'm not a big Najee guy, but I think if Warren were to get hurt, Najee could put up like a lot of points. You know, he can handle a big workload. He gets used around the goal line. He's not a zero in the passing game. He was more efficient as a rusher last year than he's been in his career. You know, maybe, and he did deal with some injuries early on. So, you know, when I was hearing last year, throw out everything he's ever done because he's been hurt, I'm like, no, I won't. I'm not going to do that. But, you know, now that he looked a little bit better, I'm willing to be like, you know, and his price actually dropped significantly because he's not the best back in his team, you know, then I'm like willing to be like, okay, yeah. And now I will say like, maybe some of the early career stuff was a little bit more injury related because he was kind of decent last year. And, you know, I'm willing to bet on Najee the player to an extent at a certain price. The Bengals guys, I don't even know like what they are at all.
They're fancy Cowboys backfield.
They're fancy Cowboys backfield. Yeah,
Zach Moss is a much better version of Zeke, and Chase Brown is a much better version of Rico Dowdle. But like, I'm still really not sure what I'm buying. You know, I don't really.
But I should buy them a little more. I think that's one of my big takeaways from this conversation is I should be drafting more Bengals running back. That's a good bet to make. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm taking plenty of Chase. It's really Moss, so I need to draft more of.
And I mean, I think he might be good. Zach Moss might be good. Like, so if we go back through we went back through the Najee weird career trajectory. We go back to the Zach Moss one. He definitely struggled, right, in Buffalo. But everywhere Devin Singletary goes, he does that to the guy who's in the backfield with him. Maybe Devin Singletary is just better than we're all giving him credit for. Now, if you're very good, you shouldn't get banished, you know, to the bench by Devin Singletary. I'm not trying to argue that, but he was young, right? If we're doing maybe Najee was banged up. It was the very beginning of Zach Moss's career. We fast forward a little bit once he gets thrown away by the Bills, and we do go to the Colts, and he's pretty good. Like, he wasn't Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, or whatever, but relative to expectation, he was quite good. He wasn't Kyren, but he was like, we talked about like how ETN was a good hit. It's just he wasn't as good of a hit as the other guys. That's what Zach Moss was. He wasn't Kyren Williams. He wasn't Mostert and Etienne. But like, shit, man, if I had Zach Moss on my team, like, I feel pretty goddamn good.
It was Chuba E. It was Singletary E.
Probably a little better than Chuba, not quite as good as the Singletary type hits, which is good. Shit, yeah, dude. Good. Like, I was using Chuba's score. I was using Chuba's score for the whole goddamn season on my best team. So like, I would have welcomed Zach Moss into that running back rotation. But now that was with the Colts. That was with Gardner Minshew and this Pittman guy who we don't want to draft in the 3rd round, and like Josh Downs, who we think is good but not amazing, right? Alec Pierce, who sucks. And now he's on the Bengals. And like Joe Mixon scored a lot of fantasy points on the Bengals, and Samaje Perine scored fantasy points on the Bengals. So like, is he good enough to score fantasy points on the Bengals? Maybe, probably. So I'm taking him and Najee are the same thing as me. I prefer the younger backup who I think probably has more upside, might just be better, but that doesn't mean I should ignore the kind of boring veteran in front of him.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One thing I've been trying to think about, like, is we're talking through, like, why would you want to burn this roster? Why are you kind of more okay burning these roster spots and not these other roster spots? And it's important not to take zeros, but yet, I am kind of willing to say I'll sacrifice 2 roster spots to create a single. We've never done a best ball auction, not like that. There's never been a BBM butt auction. And I think if there was, we would want to like maybe Moss wouldn't be, like maybe Moss shouldn't cost like $9 and Dowdle costs $4. Maybe Moss should cost $12 and Dowdle should cost $1. Like I think when we get to the late round, like I wonder, like the mental model of how auction applies, because that's redraft, and I think you would want to pay more for the guys in this range, right? The Lockett's, the Suttons, the Mike Williams. They all have a lot more value than in redraft, and the running backs do as well. I mean, these running backs even more so than those receivers. Like the running backs with locked in roles, entering the season of some kind. And maybe not the starters, but these guys aren't going to get cut. They're not going to, just disappear.
They're going to
mostly
score fantasy points.
They're going to score fantasy points. Having the chance to take a Zach Moss compared to, I don't know, Eric Gray, like.
Oh fuck! I just moved Eric Gray up in the rankings.
I'm taking some Eric Gray. That's why I said him, because I'm starting to take him now because he was supposed to be there too. And then they asked Dable about the room, and he talked about Tyron Tracy. So I was like, maybe that was just. But
Tyron Tracy's like our age, and I've played as much running back.
But he was a receiver.
Tracy has. Yeah, it's fucking.
If a guy could convert from wide receiver to running back at age 40, and I would be like. That's pretty old, but let me see him play. I want to see him at least.
It's like the basketball player that becomes a tight end of running backs.
He's 40. I'm probably out, but I mean, was he efficient?
Like if LeBron goes and plays for the Chargers at tight end next year or whatever, we'll be taking him in like the 4th round. He's fucking 40, but it's like he's the greatest basketball player of all time, and he's gonna go play. Remember Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez and whatever. But
elite tight end smashed in 2024, so we got to take LeBron.
He goes in the first 2 rounds, don't you know? Dude, I hate the Giants so much. I hate Brian Daboll for doing this to me with the Eric Gray and Tyrone Tracy thing.
I know. I moved Tracy
and
back
Devin
up a
Singletary.
little.
Yeah, it's brutal. But again, another example. I'm not saying those guys are league winners at all because I don't believe that. But like, dude, 2 years ago, the Giants made the playoffs. Daniel Jones was on your winning team and made a lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah.
We're still drafting Saquon really high because of those years on the Giants. And
I'm doing the Giants. I don't take
nobody
Jones.
gives a shit, and nobody gives a shit. Yeah. I mean, Malik Neighbors is going to end up near the top of my wide receiver.
Yeah, me too.
Exposure list, and I'm willing to take the Giants backups, but it's another one where like, dude, you want to talk? Is that also not really similar to that Rams, Kyler Puka example? Yeah, that's 100% a puke and rally, right? Even more so, probably. Like there's just, and we're giving all the production to Malik Neighbors, which I think he's a great pick. I'm not doubting that at all, but he hasn't even played in the NFL. like at least with Cooper Kupp, we saw the just scorched earth season. Like this dude is a fucking superstar type situation. And Olave, we've seen like he's very good. He's not Cooper Kupp, but like we're giving this all to a rookie, and then no other Giant goes until what? Singletary. 115 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then nobody again until what?
Wandale?
Wandale. Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm not saying Wandale or Hyatt or Slayton or Bellinger, or I guess if Waller plays, or Eric Gray, I'm not saying any of those guys are that. But when we're talking about these situations where the league winners can come from if chaos happens, they're maybe even a better example than some of the other ones that
they're a great example. I mean, Giants not bad is how you win that bet. Giants not bad. Weak neighbors good. Giants not bad. You win that bet. And I don't.
Wandale Robinson good.
Yeah.
You know what?
Gray, honestly, it is. It's they're the Commanders. They're this year's Commanders bet. You know, I'm pretty allergic to the Daniel Jones
quarterback bench thing. Yeah.
He's going to get benched. He has injury guarantees in his contract. I think it's like $23 million. 2025 guarantees. Yeah, he's Russ. They're not doing that. They're not like they have to make the playoffs.
They got to win for him to.
They have to make the playoffs.
Not a bet I'm super interested in making.
Yeah. So with Jones, it's Giants like good, like kind of shockingly good. But you don't need Jones because look, Drew Lock's the backup. Drew Lock can facilitate some stuff. He literally did last year. He got JSN.
Not wins, but fantasy points is
fine. Fantasy points, he's down. He's
Jameis. He's white Jameis.
Yeah. He's jamming out to the music on the speaker system. He's locked in, dude. Drew Lock. I believe in him. I'm not like, oh no, when Drew Lock comes out in week 15.
He's not Zach Wilson. He's not Zach Wilson or Tim Boyle or anything like that. No.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the Giants is a good one. I think you can do like if I have neighbors and I've taken Wandale, I will mix in Tracy. I will mix in Eric Gray a little. I'm not those. It's like it's definitely those three, and Tracy returns kicks. So I think he's active. I think all three are active on game day. There's not there's not a Travis Homer here who's going to like make one of these guys inactive. It's these three guys. Yep. So I think all three running backs are draftable, although none of them are like real targets for me right now. And I kind of feel the same about the receivers. Wanda's not really a target for me, but I do draft him. Slayton's not really a target for me, but I take him. And I take him especially when I have a bunch of rookies, which I do frequently. And then I also mix in other guys. Like I mix in like a Greg Dortch, right? There's some other boring veterans down there. But I think Slayton kind of has some utility. I don't take Hyatt so much. He scares me because
I haven't taken him yet.
Yeah,
but I'm like
he's not a starter. Did you see the Daboll comment?
Those guys are so tough. Yes. Those guys are so tough.
He knows where to line up now. A year later.
Yeah, it was Daboll's comment. Daboll is awesome, by the way. Please, they need to win. Yeah. They need to win so he doesn't get fired because like Sirianni's out there, like stroking it to Saquon Barkley and whatever, and Daboll's just like, I don't care. Like we're just.
Was Sirianni always this Philly? I feel like he was like a normal guy.
The Philly.
He is the most Philly guy I've ever seen now.
It's and it's a wonder why they started losing ever since he turned all Philly. I'll leave that without any additional comments. Sorry to my Philly.
You've said
folks.
Enough.
Yeah, sorry to my Philly folks. But he went full bro. He's gone full bro. The crying during this stuff and like it is what it is. But Daboll is like Daboll is like the fun guy who turns being a hardo into humor, right? He's not Belichick where it's like you're just too much. You're just a total hardo. Which also Damian Harris has come out recently and talked about Belichick and who are the OC, the slapdick OC, the trio of
McDaniels?
OCs or whatever after McDaniels. Patricia and yes, when he did that and basically saying like he knew and all the Patriots players knew that it was going to be bad like before the season started. Probably not a great sign for the coaches, but Daboll to me is like kind of the opposite of all that stuff. I still believe in him as a coach, and maybe I'll be wrong about that, but he's been like he's not Dennis Allen to where he's like straight up saying my guys suck to the media, but he's also not like bullshitting us either, right? It's like I'm complimenting Jaylen Hyatt, but I'm also, you mentioned Jordan Rodrigue last week about how like she was like kind of giving us context clues. She wasn't specifically saying what she was saying because maybe she, she has a relationship with McVay and the team and stuff. She can't just like leak all, the alpha. But that's kind of what Dayball is doing, where he's like, I'm going to compliment Hyatt in a way that doesn't make Jaylen Hyatt feel bad because I am his coach, but I'm not going to bullshit you and say like, oh yeah, he fucking figured it out, right? Like the JMO thing. It's like, he's not the best player in camp. He's not like taking this huge leap and we're all impressed by him. It's like, no, he just has learned the playbook better, right? And he said that about, he also said that about, that was his go-to. Basically, Jaylen Hyatt didn't know where to line up last year, and now he knows where to line up. Big step in a year or two for Jaylen Hyatt. And Tyrone Tracy, being as old as Pat and I, he knows the playbook a little. Like he knows a football playbook fine. Like they're okay with.
I took the Tracy stuff as more positive because he was like, I don't want to say he was like shocking, but it's like, yeah, it's pretty. Like I like that this guy
with Tracy than they are with Hyatt is what I.
He seemed like legit impressed because he was like basically like I thought the way I read it was like I thought this guy was going to be kind of a pain in my ass like as a rookie running back. I was going to have to be like, come on, man.
Yeah, and converted wide receiver.
That was awesome. Like I can't tell you how awesome that was today. I just did not want to deal with that headache, and Tyrone didn't let me down. That's kind of how I read that one.
I didn't sleep last night because I knew I was have to deal with this slapdick wide receiver who were trying to teach how to play running back, and I showed up, and he wasn't bad. He wasn't bad.
Actually.
So like I agree. It was very positive.
Dan Campbell, by the way, like you talk about like the JMO one. I think he has this trait. As much as anybody. We're trait scouting coaches now. He was talking about Jameson Williams. He's talking about in very positive ways. He's talked about Khalif Raymond in very positive ways. He's talked about Sam Laporta.
The Khalif Raymond quote was a burial of him in terms of like a real like big time NFL football player, and he spun it into a way that made him sound absolutely amazing. It was incredible.
What was the quote exactly? I don't remember.
The quote was basically like, he's a niche player. This is not exactly his quote. He basically was saying he's a niche player. He's never going to be, this I think he actually said like he's never going to be like an every down, type player, but he's like super important for us. We need him, and he's going to be a big factor for us. Like he found a way to basically say,
well, he said he can play. He was like, he can play this X, he can play the Z, he can play the F. Like this guy moves around. He can do whatever we need him to do. He's good on special teams.
Yep.
Like Khalif Raymond is a part of their plans, even if he's not. I mean, it's gonna be like their fourth target in the passing game, right?
And he's never going to
fifth, probably actually behind Gibbs.
As great as he was last year, like I know you've seen it. Like the analytics. Khalif Raymond is the Rorschach test for analytics versus like small sample analytiits with ignoring context versus like actually like let's take a step back a little bit. And I'm not saying like watch the tape first because I have always thought Khalif Raymond was kind of good.
Kind of good.
Yeah. But like in terms of fantasy impact, like if you just went and looked at yards per route run, an open score, and targets per route run, and any if you looked at basically any metric last year, you're like, holy fuck, why is Khalif Raymond top 5 in everything? And everything. BBM to me would be like, why is Khalif Raymond going in the last round? You guys are fucking idiots. This guy's amazing. Like old me would have been, because I just would have been like, I've uncovered this superstar.
Yeah, he's the guy.
But you take a step back and you say, well, he's 30. he's 30. He's been around, and he's a bit. The reason why he's able to do the things that he's able to do is because he has a role, and he's very good at that role, and that it's an important role, but it's not necessarily a fantasy role, right? And so like I don't have any interest in that player.
I do take him some Khalif Raymond. I don't think he shouldn't be an 18th round pick, but I think the fact that he is an 18th round pick and I think he's good, and he's on an offense that I'm interested in generally, and or potentially bring back on another offense that I'm interested in. I take some Khalif Raymond. I'm not hammered. I don't think you should be like just packing your bags with Khalif Raymond, but sometimes you're like, man, I need a receiver here. I've got 4 rookies. Oh, Khalif Raymond, yeah, seems great. He's on the Dortch, the Slaytons. Like Khalif Raymond fits right in there with me. I think he's totally fine. But then so Coach Speak Index had a good quote on, or good clip from Campbell talking about DPJ, and he was just like, yeah, he's a big body guy. He's got to be out there hand fighting. We need him to really. And he kind of said that where I was like, oh, so like you want to see him work on that? He's like, I basically want this big dude to be more physical, because he was like his size is a separation. He's that kind of player. But yeah, he's coming here. If we didn't like him, he wouldn't be here.
The key Coleman. That's the key on Coleman. His size is his separation. I like that. Campbell is a wordsmith. I like this guy.
He's great.
Yeah,
he's great. But then you got to apply the context to it when you think like, I wonder if Jared Goff prefers separation or size being separation. Which kind of quarterback is Jared Goff?
I can answer that for every quarterback, by the way. Be open. They all like it better.
Yeah, although Trevor Lawrence is down to throw it up there. Some of these
Aaron
guys.
Rodgers will, but like if you have to be Devontae Adams or whatever, right? It's like they'll prefer it if you're a Hall of Famer
who also just gets open.
Yeah. Also, it's just like Rodgers will just look over at Devontae. He's like, "You're single covered. I'm just going to throw it to you, right? I don't give a shit." But like, Jared Goff is not looking at Donovan Peoples-Jones like, "Yeah, bro, 1-on-1, got you."
Yeah, exactly. So, but it is interesting to see. I think that quote was interesting, not because I'm like, should I draft Donovan Peoples-Jones, but it's interesting to see Campbell talk about a variety of players and how striking this was. The Coach Big Index was pointing this out, that how strikingly different it was to hear him talk about DPJ, and it makes you go, okay, hey, probably the JMO stuff's probably a little real. It's not enough to have a good May and June. It's not enough, but seems like he probably really is having that good May and June, and that's something. Yep. So yeah, it is nice when we can kind of, Campbell's the best because like, even he's so like, he's just such a good communicator, he just is like, when you watch him, you're able to like understand like where he's coming from on stuff. Like the Laporta, I think we talked about this last week, but the Laporta quote where he's like, all these other guys could have more targets than him, but he's like Brock Wright. And, he like waits for it. And it's like, all right, like he's just having fun. None of this is like, he's not predicting any of this. He's just saying this dude is down to be a warrior for me. And I love that about him. And I don't care about how many targets he gets. Just quit asking me about it. Like you can.
Great coach. You can tell he's a great coach, and they love him, and his players love him.
They love him. They love him.
The way that, like you said, him mentioning Brock Wright amidst a Sam Laporta question is just like, Brock Wright was like, fuck yeah, dude, I'm going to go run through this wall for you.
Yeah. That's a great point.
There's no reason for you to say Brock Wright is going to take targets away from Sam Laporta. Like, that's nonsense. We all know that that's nonsense.
He knew it was nonsense. He was having fun.
Yeah, he was just riffing. But him riffing, Dennis Allen riffs, and he says, A.T. Perry is truly incompetent. Right. And then lists all the things that A.T. Perry is really bad about. And Dan Campbell riffs, and all he does is not only hype Sam Laporta, he hypes like 6 other players during this conversation that he's having. And that's like, that's great if you're just a fan like all of us. That's really fun to see and cool to see, and also why the Lions are good and why Dan Campbell is a good head coach. But also, like, when we're trying to extract information, that's important to know. Like, he's mentioning Brock Wright because of all this context that we're talking about. He's not like saying this is bad for Sam Laporta, as you've outlined the last couple episodes. Like, this is how he communicates. And he's doing a great job as the head coach of the football team. But like, what another coach says is going to be very different, and we're going to draw different conclusions than what we would from Dan Campbell. I have one more question, because I think it's we talked a lot about the Josh Downs archetype. I want to talk about the Jameson Williams archetype, which is like the wide receiver Tank Bigsby-ish type.
This is probably the one we tend to disagree on the most, I think, is that I get a little nervous about these guys. More nervous than
and I have gravitated a little more. So it's funny because we've talked, frequently for a few years now. And I think you've slowly moved a little bit more from the Sam Howell-ish risk of, last round running backs. I'm not saying I'm much more, psychopathic with those guys than you are, or than most people are, but you've moved a little bit off of where when we first started, you moved a little bit off of that way. But in this way,
in this time of year as well, like in August, give me all those late round, like when I have the information, I hammer the information
100%. But then you're exactly what you're saying in this example, the Jameson Williams, the Jackson Smith and Jigbas, the Kadarius Tonys of last year, the Sky Moores of last year, the Gabe Davises, right?
Well, there's a I forget my exact exposure, but it wasn't high. I was really on him as a rookie, ridiculously, comically in. The next year, I wasn't so in.
But I'm saying those guys I've always been willing, I have typically been willing throughout my history to hang on to my priors and my prospect analysis and
8% Sky Moore. So I was even with the field last year.
It was fine. Yeah, you're a coward. Yeah. But like historically, I would have been like, I don't care that JSN was bad last year. I don't care. I loved him coming in. It was a blip, second year wide receiver, all the bullshit. I would have held on to that. Right. And I even still, struggle with that. But I think Jameson Williams is even more so than JSN, maybe like what are we doing here in one way or the other? It could be, what are we doing here? This guy's done nothing in 2 years. And it also could be, what are we doing here? He's the wide receiver 2 on the Detroit Lions with a top 10 draft pick and a really fun prospect profile. And he's only played 18 NFL games. We're going to write him off when we're drafting Glad McConkey in the 60s and Keon Coleman in the 60s. And this guy's going, it was in the hundreds. Now it's obviously risen up. I think you could, like, those guys are some of the most divisive. And I can see the like, oh shit, yeah, JMO is who we hoped JMO would be. But I can also see the like, no, dum-dum, he's played for 2 years and he hasn't done shit. So like, what do you think about players like that as I just double check on my dog real quick?
Yeah, I get nervous on them. And I was talking on Twitter about JSN. Someone was asking me about kind of where I stood on JSN and, basically like that I wasn't baking in all of the positive stuff from last year. Role change, potentially, certainly from kind of the screen heavy, really shallow stuff early in the season. Won't be dealing with a wrist injury, potential for Lockett to maybe decline a little bit more. New offensive coordinator, year 2 breakout potential as well. Strong prospect profile. Don't want to throw that out. Why am I not baking that in? I'm only looking at his rookie season. And I'm like, I am baking that in. I am baking that in. If you just looked at JSN's rookie season alone, like, we're taking like the 130s, 140s. Like, so, or maybe you say, well, look at his rookie season plus kind of more of a blank slate, high draft capital profile. Okay, then maybe he's going like around Jerry Jeudy or something, but like he's not going where he is without us baking in a decent amount of the stuff that everyone thinks I'm not baking in. I am baking it in. I just don't bake it in as much as other people, I think. Or at least I'm baking it in less than I used to. And I'm baking it in less than I will in redraft. In redraft, if you're like 7th round, I'm taking JSN the 7th round smash. Oh, okay. Like, let's do it. It's not going to be like my stand, but like I'm a lot more into it where I don't know. I just feel like with the 7th, there's a lot of opportunity cost in best ball to, take on some of the risk on this guy. And then I also just feel like he's not that risky. He's going to have a role, but like it's decent. That like the miss that he offers up is like still pretty. It still hurts. Like missing on that 7th round wide receiver who's just like not that good really hurts you in best ball. Like, and I drafted a ton of. Rashad Bateman was my highest drafted receiver last year, so like maybe that's part of it, right? But like if he turns out to be Bateman, that really hurts you still at this price.
Treylon Burks,
and these are guys that I was drafting a lot last year. So maybe it's just I'm gun shy for that. But I am drafting JSN.
Do you think that's part of it? I've asked myself that as well.
Yeah, I think it's part of it.
I have recently missed on this profile. I like them as so what I will say is I really liked Bateman as a prospect.
Me too.
I didn't really like Burks as a prospect.
No,
so maybe I'm more like I didn't really like. It's not the right word. I was fine. I don't hate him. I don't love him. It's like trying to think of an example from this year. Maybe Brian Thomasy. I'm like, I see the perks, but I see the like, not like it's kind of like Brian Thomasy for also first round pick, SEC wide receiver or whatever. I just wonder. I'm always trying to.
Like, is it a bias?
I'm always. The reason why I'm willing to draft Austin Eckler this year and why we're having the Zach Moss versus Chase Brown conversation and why I'm taking Rico Dowdle, even though like every time I click it, I like have to run to the restroom and throw up. Like it's because I'm trying to really continue to get better and hone in on my process. And I feel like this is the one I actually can't figure out if it's is it bias? Or is it legitimately like, is this good process to be like, no, they showed us, right? We're saying Tank Bigsby showed us something. We're saying, Rico Dowdle has showed us something. I know that they're running backs, but like we're saying Josh Downs has showed us something and we're putting him into this box as a player. If why are we then buying back on JSN in the 7th round or whatever, when like historically, how many of these times has the player hit? Now there is upside, right, and all of that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to like, I don't know what the right answer is, and I can't figure out if it's me being biased or if I'm just like objectively taking in all the information.
My thing with both JSN and Jameson Williams. So I'm not really in on this year, but taking some of, and I'm probably more in on JSN than Jameson Williams. But I don't want to be hard fading these guys. But my general take.
Why is that?
Yeah, because I could be wrong. Like their prospect profiles were strong enough that they could be
pretty similar prospect profiles, like fairly close enough.
And like their situations are also, there's chaos. Like they benefit from chaos. Like if Lockett stinks, if Metcalf gets hurt, if Amon-Ra misses any time, if Laporta takes a step back. Sorry, what's that?
Your Khalif Raymond shares will look good if Amon-Ra.
yeah, right. I do. I mean, you can play it through Raymond a little bit, not a ton, but a little. They kind of benefit from chaos in that sense, and they are going to be out there. They're locked into roles. So they're, like the type of bet where I'm saying I don't want to be entirely certain about how it's going to break. It's kind of like as we talked through Zach Moss, I'm like, I should probably take more Zach Moss. It's kind of like that where I'm like, these aren't my favorite bets, but man, like I can definitely see it. I can see it paying off, and it can see it paying off and being like, I wish I had some of that. It wasn't a smart full fade, because there's a pretty realistic path. Like I'm not full fading Josh Jacobs either. Like I don't take a lot of Josh Jacobs, but I could be wrong. Like they could give him plenty of work and he could get used. He could maybe get mixed in sometime. Marshawn Lawrence getting mixed in between the 20s, decent rate, but he just owns the goal line role. Like, oh man, like in the 5th round, you're full fading that dude. Like that could really hurt you. So
I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for it to get to 0 running back. I'm just gonna wait the market out on all these guys. We're gonna do 3 years or whatever it was, 2 years ago. Josh Jacobs all over again. He starts high and moves all the way down. And actually gonna take 8th round Josh Jacobs this
year. So I think, both these, and I'm talking about, I'm not comparing them as talents to Zach Moss and Josh Jacobs or whatever in the different positions, but I'm saying like all of these guys, they're in a range where I can see the hit really hurting me and feeling kind of like an obvious target in retrospect once we know that they are going to produce. But it's like, man, yeah. Oh, it turns out a wide receiver, stepping up in their second year as the clear number 2 to DK Metcalf and an offense that ends up hitting is actually a really good pick in the 7th round. That's not shocking, right? With Jameson Williams, who's a top 5 pick or whatever he was, what did he go? Top 10?
Ninth?
Whatever. Ninth, yeah. So top 10 NFL pick, finally healthy, finally sold the coaches that, they can lean on him, is awesome. That's in the 9th round. And everyone's like, there's no receivers left. And I can get this guy over with the 8th round or whatever. Like that seems pretty great, in retrospect, now that I know he's going to produce. So I don't want to full fade these guys, but
12th.
12th. Yeah. Okay. You're getting like with the rookies, right? Compared to Ladd, you're paying a lot for Ladd. Ladd's probably not that good. He's probably not bad, but he's probably not that good. Pretty easily could be the number 2 to Josh Palmer this year on a low volume passing offense. Could be a horrendous pick, but he could be amazing. Mm-hmm. Like Ladd could be amazing. It's difficult to price this, and this is where rookies maybe we're going too far with the rookie thing, but like, I don't think JSN's amazing. And that's the part where what
do you think the difference? So like, if you had to price the difference between, okay, so if Ladd's going to like really, really hit at that price, right? He's going to be amazing. So let's just say,
right.
If the percentage chance that Ladd is amazing versus the percentage chance that someone like a JSN or Jameson Williams is amazing, who was a good prospect, but we now have this tangible NFL sample. Even though it's small, we have this NFL data that was like, they weren't amazing at all. How do you like compare, right? I'm trying to think of like comparing the two. Like Ladd was not quite as good of a prospect, but he could be anything, even a boat. But right. Jameson Williams and JSN were better prospects, but now we have this information that's like,
they're not both.
Less likely they're a boat. It's a lot less likely they're a boat. It's technically possible. It's technically still possible, but it's a lot less likely. So like, just like trying to, right? Like Keon is the same thing. It's like, I don't
Keon's
like
the same thing.
It's like, how do I compare those two profiles?
Yeah, and I think it's worth the premium. Like, I want to take those guys the round early as opposed to the guy who I thought was a better prospect. I think so. And this is a change in and maybe I'll look back and go, nope, you just got burned by Bateman and Burks.
Next year we're like, you idiot, you took Keon and Ladd over JMO and JSN and they broke out and but that's why I asked the bias
I could see
question.
that.
It's like, so even if that happens, it doesn't mean this is wrong. It doesn't mean that we were wrong for taking Ladd and Keon it could mean we're wrong, but you know what I mean? It's like, we could be biased now this year against JSN and JMO and then act with that bias. And then JMO and JSN hit, and then we go the opposite way. But we might have been right in the first, you know what I mean? Like that's because it's 1 year, it's only a couple of players, right? It's like the Kyron thing. It's like assuming that it's like, we're like, oh shit, we got to draft 18th round, 5th round draft pick wide receivers who were small and slow, but they have a shitty running back in front of them. It's like, they're not all going to be Kyron Williams. It's like JMO and JSN could end up being outliers, and then we try to chase our fucking tails with the next JMO and JSN, and they were actually bad bets, but like, Devontae Adams hit and he fucking sucked, for the first couple of years. Should we try to chase every Devontae Adams? No, but like, that's what I'm trying to, that's ultimately, if we could solve that question, we wouldn't have to talk. We'd make so much money at this game. It would be easy.
Yeah. And I don't think, to be honest, I don't think it's bias. I think it's a lesson. At least I hope, because I'm changing the way I'm drafting, but it sucks if it turns out to be a bias. But like, I'm not out. I've got 4% JSN, and I'd like that to be more like 6 or 7, like slightly underweight. That's where I'd like to get to. I don't want to be taking a big fade stance on him. I just don't think he's like a real target in this range. And I'm hammering this profile basically, with Bateman, Burks. I'm hammering it here to let me be even-ish, a little less than even. That's where I'd like to be. Look at Bateman, right? Like Bateman, I love the profile. Keep betting on the profile. And the reason I don't think this is a bias is because I'm kind of wired historically to keep betting on the profiles I like, right? Like I that's what I've normally done. So the fact that I'm not doing that, I feel like I'm trying to help myself here.
You're going again when your actual human bias is to continue to bet on the profile.
I think so.
So when your new natural direction is to go the opposite way, theoretically, that's not bias. That's
hopefully
growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully it's growth, not bias. Yeah. Because I'm saying, like, with JSN, okay, let's just say the Bateman thing, right? I thought Bateman was a great prospect. He was efficient. No, he was inefficient as a rookie, but then he was efficient as a sophomore, like impressively efficient, but on limited volume. He didn't run all the routes, and then he got hurt.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, hang on. Like, this dude is actually really efficient last year. And now, I know they signed OBJ, but he's pretty dusty. Like, that's not really a concern. Bateman's good, then OBJ does not matter. I know they drafted Flowers, but he was an okay prospect, not great. I don't think he's going to be a superstar. He could be pretty good. And I think this offense is going to pass more. We got the OC upgrade. That's awesome. And, that we got Lamar Jackson, who's, not necessarily like the classic elite quarterback who facilitates passing production, but he is just like a elite real life quarterback. So that's cool, but like, we had a lot of evidence that Bateman wasn't awesome heading into last year. There was a lot of evidence, including the fact that they signed OBJ to like way too much money, including the fact that they drafted Zay Flowers in the first round. Like, there was a lot of evidence that he was not awesome. And so it's not as clear with JSN, I would say, but like, they did bring back Lockett.
Yep.
They brought back Lockett. They didn't have to do that. They didn't draft anybody, and he's locked into a role. But like, I don't, he wasn't any of the metrics. Even like Matt Harmon was fairly optimistic on him and his reception perception, but he's basically like, yeah, it's pretty solid. Everything looked here pretty solid to me. It's not all that bullish. But so like, I'm like,
Samuel's pretty solid, right? Like, pretty solid is like that's what we're like. Pretty, like, literally go look at reception perception and he'll be like, yeah, Curtis Samuel's really good. And it's like, that's fine, but like, I don't want to draft that in the 7th round of my fantasy.
Right. Which is about what you're about to have to do with Curtis Samuels. He keeps rocking it up. But like, that's where I'm like, okay, I want to think about it more from the perspective of what are the chances this guy is like awesome, and have I gotten new information that that's not likely to be, that's less likely than it was last year and less likely than some of the other guys going in this range or just ahead. And I do feel that way with JSN, that, I think he could be like a pretty damn good slot receiver. I think he could be like, I think he could have the breakout season Tyler Boyd did in his third year. I think he could do that, but Tyler Boyd did that with no one else on the team. Like, what if they let Lockett go and JSN was the clear number 2? I think I'm more, it's more now you're betting on situation, but sure, like, let's move JSN up some. What does he cost though? Is he a 3rd round pick? I'm out. Is he a 4th round pick? I think I'm out. Is he a 5th round pick? I'm in. I think that's how, that's where I would be. But I bet he would be a 4th rounder or even higher.
Get him after Terry McLaurin into the Hollywood Brown range or whatever.
I'd take him over Hollywood. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's really, really interesting because we talked a ton about uncertainty and chaos and all that kind of stuff, and we can sit here and talk until the cows come home, and sometimes we do about all these guys and our assessments. And to quote our good friend David Kitchen, like, we just don't know, dude. We really don't know. So we have to act with as much information as we can. And I brought up those guys because I know that you and I have historically been
How much JSN and Jameson are you drafting?
almost no JSN, a little bit more JMO.
Okay, so what is it about the JSN profile that?
I think that JSN was objectively like bad last year, and I think that JMO is more. JMO is still, he just turned 23, and that's like a fairly big deal for me, like coming in as a 21-year-old and 21-year-old with an ACL tear in his rookie season. This, again, why I'm asking about my bias is because I'm definitely using some things to like cope with the poor start for JMO that I probably don't use for every single player. And I think when he came into the league, again, with an ACL tear on this Detroit Lions team, that we're talking about Dan Campbell and how awesome he is, but like, you don't just get to show up and like fuck around and go out and play for the Detroit Lions. Like, there is this level of standard why he's hyping up all these guys. And so I do think JMO said it. Like, I was immature when I came into the league, and I wasn't ready, and I wasn't taking this all serious. I mean, he did the gambling thing, right? He's gambling on at the team facility. I think he was a fucking idiot when he came into he tore his ACL. They probably told him, like, you're not going to play to start the year, and he's 21 and he didn't give a shit. Now, does that mean that's not necessarily a good thing to bet on the guy, but everything we're seeing now is kind of like,
it's encouraging.
It's all encouraging. Whereas the JSN, the only things that are encouraging about JSN is that the coaching staff is gone and he has shit on the old coaching staff, which is like,
and they're saying some nice things. They're saying some nice things about him. Yeah,
for sure. But like, if we're comparing the niceness of the two things, they're very, very different. I just think, like I said, I think it is partially biased because I'm looking at the 18 games that Jameson Williams has played in the NFL, which are almost the same amount of games that JSN versus JMO. Hey, hush. They've like the same amount of NFL games. And I see all these caveats that I can put to the JMO games, right? And I don't really see any for JSN. And so that's probably what it is.
Yeah. The wrist injury, I guess, it depends how much you want to give credit for the slow start to the wrist injury and that. I mean, that is, I think, a legitimate thing you could say with JSN.
Yeah, that's true. He definitely had the wrist thing. That's definitely
Jameson. I mean, Jameson is like, he's expensive, man. 86 is his ADP now. Like,
yeah.
I said 9th round earlier. That's not where he goes. I as you can tell, I don't really take him because I was off by like a round and a half where his ADP is. So yeah, I've taken him. I think I've taken him once. It makes me nervous. I said I don't want to be completely out.
I'm not overweight either of these guys, to be totally clear.
Okay.
Like, these are not. I have my draft IQ. I'm on DraftKings. Let me see what Jameson Williams. I haven't drafted him on DraftKings, so there you go.
Okay.
Let's look at underdogs just super quickly. I know I have drafted him on underdog, but not a lot. 8%. So call it underweight across both of the sites. I don't think I've taken him on drafters. So like, my whole portfolio, we're probably sitting 3 to 4% Jameson Williams and even a little less JSN.
I'd rather be there than where I'm at, which is like 1%. On Jameson Williams, I'd rather be like 3-4%. I mean, I could see the thing with Jameson Williams that I think this is kind of an archetype bet, but like compared to JSN, like if Jameson Williams isn't even that good and JSN isn't that good, I think Jameson is still, and they're running the same amount of routes. I want Jameson.
Yes.
But I think JSN has a better chance to be
right.
To kind of dictate who gets targets. Yeah. Jameson's not going to dictate that who gets targets so much. Like Amon-Ra, because the answer is Amon-Ra. He's getting the targets. And then the second answer is Laporta, and then you're Jared Goff's deep threat. Like, you're not going to be a high target guy, but could you produce a few spike weeks? Absolutely. So the bar is lower on what you need talent-wise with Jameson, but I feel better about JSN proving last year was an anomaly because, I mean, the prospect profile was very strong, and he's going into his second year. And I think the fact that he is going into his second year as opposed to his third season is a meaningful data point, where when you go into the third season and you've only gotten some flashes.
He's also young. He's also young. So
he's also young.
Age thing also applies to. I mean, JSN just turned 22. So we have a 22-year-old and a 23-year-old. They're young.
Yeah. So, but I mean, yeah, both guys make me uneasy with where they're going in drafts for sure. But I don't want to be completely out.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure out what that means, because I think that that's what I believe. I don't want to go into my season and like have a fairly sizable investment in my year based on these two guys. I don't think that that's the right way to play it. But I also don't know that it's the right way to play it to just say, ha ha ha, don't you see they've been bad? They were bad. You idiots are taking 0 of them. Neither of those are my perspective, yet my actual portfolio is kind of playing out to the ha ha ha, you guys are idiots for taking this guy. And I don't know that that's right either. Like I'm not practicing what I'm preaching when we're talking about this. I'm saying like, I get it, but I don't want to be overweight. But in practice, I'm really saying, no, fuck these guys. I don't want any of them,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But it is when you think through like what these profiles give us versus what the rookies give us, if you want to talk about Kadarius Toney again, but not in the way you think, in a nice way. Kadarius Toney in the regular season, maybe in the this doesn't have the playoffs, so I don't know. But Kadarius Toney has exactly 1 spike week in his entire career, and it was as a rookie. Right? It was as a like rookie.
Double-digit catch game, didn't he?
He had 10 for 189. No touchdown. Scored 29 PPR points. No touchdown. 13 targets. Also ran for 7 yards. So he's never hit 20 PPR points in any other game in his entire career. He got 19 for 57 and a touchdown, running 2 for 33 in week 10. I guess that was probably his second game with the Chiefs, maybe? I can't remember. But anyway, Kadarius Toney's not the answer, but the one time that he did it was as a rookie. And so the nice thing about the rookies is like Keon Coleman's probably not the answer for the Bills or for us, but he might still score 25 points.
Yeah, it's so true.
And that's like where I'm just like, and then, okay, if that's kind of my floor with Coleman, which I think it is, because he's going to be out there a bunch, a healthy floor of Coleman. He's running a lot of routes over the course of the season. They're going to see what they have. And then like, what if I'm wrong? What if he's good? And I'm paying the 7th round for that? That seems fine. That seems better than fine. He's like damn near target. Brian Thomas. I'm drafting the hell out of Brian Thomas. He's in the 7th round now. I don't know if he's good, but he's going to be out there a lot, and he's going to be out there most at the end of the season, and if he's good, I'm getting to pair end of season route volume with a high end talent. That's all. I mean, that's not a 7th round price. You don't pay 7th round for high end talent plus all the routes that you paid the 2nd round for that, or the 1st. I don't know. He's probably situation. Not. Yeah, in a good situation. He's probably not a 1st round level receiver, but like, is he a 3rd round level? Could be. So I don't know.
Deontay Johnson is more expensive than these guys. Deontay Johnson's more expensive than these guys, and we know what he is, and he's on the Panthers. And
So I think I've made a concerted effort to kind of pull back from the 2nd year profile a little bit in best ball specifically, where I think we have gotten guys like we've gotten Sutton, we've gotten some guys in sort of the Bateman zone range in their 2nd season become big hits. So I'm not saying like that profile's not good. I think it is good. It's probably better in redraft where the floor just doesn't matter so much in the 7th round. Who cares? If you don't hit, who cares? Take a big swing. I do care in best ball. I care a lot, and I want the second year guys that have shown that have flashed, right? If you've flashed in your second year, like, oh yeah, I'm in. Rasheed Rice in the 7th round with a suspension.
Right.
Sounds
Yeah.
great. I'm into that. You flashed, and you have Patrick Mahomes. Like I'm down. I'm not saying the second year is across the board, but the guys we believed in who didn't perform all that well and are still fairly expensive make me especially nervous. If you're giving me second year Josh Downs after he flashed and then he had played through an injury and now he's probably the third wide receiver on his team, and I have to, it's hard to get excited about, but he's available at pick 130 every time. You want that? Yes, I do.
Right. If JSN was at pick 130 or JMO was at pick 130, this conversation would be different.
It'd be totally different. Yeah, and to the point before of like, what should auction dollars cost? Like, what should a 7th round pick be worth in a redraft league? Be worth in a best ball league? And I feel like we would probably win a lot of auctions in best ball if we spent more of our budget in the middle rounds than our competitors to make sure that we had like a bunch of hits. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and don't like the stars and scrubs thing is very popular in auction, but it assumes that we have a bunch of,
you need like 4 guys.
Yeah, and it assumes that so I just recently did an auction. Oh my God, was it for Roto World or something? Anyway, I like on Sleeper, me and Davis and Denny and Kyle and whatever. And I do. Well, first of all, it's because it's way easier when I'm like messing around to just like buy Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill and then just sit there for 2 hours. But also because, like, I know inherently, like, I'm gonna get like Chase Brown for $2.
If you don't go stars and scrubs in a mock auction, you just don't value your time.
Sicko. Yeah, you got like you need therapy.
You're tracking every price.
I was playing basketball while I was doing this.
I'm happy to hear that.
I spent so much on Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, and then I went and played basketball and came back in like an hour and started buying running backs eventually. But no, but also like in that stuff works in auction because there's like less roster spots. Right. So like the $1 players are like 12th rounders, because you got 16 roster spots and 2 of them are a kicker and a defense, and people take multiple quarterbacks in those leagues and everything. So like it's different. And like you said, the best ball application of the auction dollars is so important because it's those $1 players are, I like Evan Hull, but like Evan Hull is a $1 player. Evan Hull doesn't get drafted in a single fucking auction league, like other than some total sicko dynasty league, right? So they're very, very, very different. The $1 player is like Ty Chandler. The $1 player is like the Algier, line we're talking about. These guys go for $1 or $2 or something in those auction leagues. So it's very, very different. I do have to run. I did want to. So I was selfishly asking about the Jameson Williams thing because I'm always trying to reevaluate. I'm also trying to be fluid. But I wrote a piece this spring while I was reevaluating some of my process and stuff. And it was I like to use the stupid cheesy analogies and stuff, but I called these players waterfalls because for anybody that's familiar with the TLC song, the song is about don't chase the waterfall, right? It's not something you want to go chase after. And that's what these players feel like to me. It's like, we will deny the production data for years about these guys. We will 1 year, 2 years, continually just say, no, look at the profile. We'll make the excuses. Well, the wrist injury. Well, he was immature when he came into the league, right? Well, he had target competition or whatever. We will make the excuse for these guys. And then you look back, how many of them ever hit, at least in a meaningful way, right? So maybe they'll hit, which means if it's a possible hit, I would like to not spend a lot on that. if I'm going to draft you in the 7th and 8th rounds, which is where these two players in particular go, the kind of hit I need is like seismic. I don't need Josh Downs from you. I need Brandon Ayuk. I need Puka Nacua. I need Garrett Wilson. Like the kind of hit I need from you when you're to like win me all the money in those rounds. And so this waterfall thing is like, even if they're not like awful, like I don't think Jameson Williams and Jackson Smith and Jigba are good.
Me neither.
To be like awful.
No, they're not awful
football players. But what I need from you, but like I don't need. I can get, dude. DeAndre Hopkins goes at these prices. If I just want to settle for like a totally mediocre veteran, like above average, I know he's not a mediocre real life football player, but like from a fantasy lens, if I just want to settle for like I know what I'm getting, not bad football player who probably scores some fantasy points, like I have that available to me here. I can draft that. If I want to bet on upside with like this weird situational uncertainty, Rashee Rice is cheaper. If I want to bet on the total wildcard uncertainty upside, you mentioned there's rookies, Lab McConkey, Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas, all available to me in this round or this range. So like, I just start to run down this list and I'm like, I would have historically continued to buy back on these guys because they're fun, exciting prospects. But like, when do they ever hit in such a way that I'm like, fuck, I can't believe I didn't take Jameson Williams. I can't believe I didn't take Jackson Smith and Jigba. Usually they might hit in a way where you're like, yeah, they turned out to be decent NFL football players. But when do they ever turn into Brandon Ayuk? When do they ever turn into Puka Nacua? Like, I can't think of one besides Devontae Adams. And like, that's the point. It's like, they're unicorns. Why do I want to chase that? Why do I want to chase that unicorn? Why do I want to chase that waterfall when like I have other players available to me in that range that I can get good solid results out of, or I can just draft another fucking position. I can draft Aaron Jones, or I can draft Jaylen Warren, or whatever, or Jake Ferguson. Like I am, again, I'm having this conversation with you to assess it and for us to talk it through. But like my core belief is like I was doing it wrong before, and I'm just chasing this thing because I'm stubborn. Honestly, because I'm being stubborn.
And because we're used to a format where you can chase it and don't get punished for chasing it.
Great point.
You just chase it, and sometimes it does hit. But when it doesn't hit, who cares? Because we like really only care about like 4 or 5 guys that season anyway. So like, just even if it's like, yeah, he's probably not one of the 4 or 5 guys, but like, also in those environments, the rookies are going to be going in the 12th round instead of the 6th. So I'll go back and get them too. I'm not actually having to decide between the two. Now we actually do have to decide between them. So yeah, I mean, I think the redraft element is a big part of it, but if you're, I got distracted. I couldn't land.
My dogs are fucking driving me nuts around here, just distracting me. But I had to get the JMO JSN one in because I think, do they have, we talked to the whole kind of show has been, we bounced around obviously, but like upside, uncertainty, league winning types and all that. And I think 2 years ago, if we would have been like, let's talk about upside and league winners, we might have fucking led with Jackson Smith.
We might have led with Jackson. Yeah, 100%.
It would have been like, no, remember, we love this prospect. Now, remember, he went much higher last year. Now we get a discount and we can buy the second year breakout. And I think, and again, I'm not saying that that's wrong. What I am saying is I'm not sure that it's right. And it might actually be wrong. And again, the market has changed. The format, there's so many variables, right? The redraft versus best ball element. There's so many of those where, look, even like I'm going to draft 1,000 teams this summer. I'm going to draft a ton of best ball teams, but it even with 1,000, it's less than you think in terms of like how many teams you have of individual players. It really is. And then you start trickling. I'm very into obviously building the best ball tools. I'm very into like, okay, I'm going to have, even if I have 30% Jaylen Warren, what do those Warren teams look like, right? How much Warren and Moss do I have? How much Warren? Okay, I only have a couple Warren Moss. How much Warren and Chase Brown do I have? How much, right? I have all these like what I like to call core assets. So that's my, like, here's the 5, 6, 7 things that I think are the edge this year. Not even just individual players, but like last year, it was kind of like the Ravens for me, where it was like I just think the Raven, like the whole thing was fucking mispriced to me. Now I was not totally right about that, but like, part of it was injury.
The damn
like,
defense was too good.
Yeah, the defense was too good. J.K. Dobbins and Mark Andrews both had their legs chopped off.
Yeah,
during the season.
Also that.
But like then I want to drill down from there. Right. And I definitely don't think JSN and JMO are core assets. So once I establish they're not core assets, it's like, okay, how do they play into this whole deal? Are they like, yep, I'll take them when they're readily available? Or are they like, they might be sacrificial lambs, man? Like, you like other guys here, you're really not going to get any of them. And I think like all that nuance is super important. Like, figuring out how you're deploying all these guys into your portfolio is like a big fucking deal. Like, not just taking them to take them, and not just like, oh, he fell 6 picks past ADP, so I got to take this guy. It's like, it's not helpful. It's not winning you anything. So, but these guys are like big decision points. Is like, are they league winning archetypes or not? Is like an important distinction, right? Are they Josh Downs? Are they Josh Downs, or are they, Malik Neighbors? That's a huge fucking difference in how we should treat them.
So one more point. I got a crying baby. I got to get out of here. But
I got a crying dog. We should go have a meetup.
The point that I lost my train of thought on was that, if you from Dynasty, most of these guys aren't anything. They're just, it's years of them slowly, our perception of how good they can be getting lower and lower. And then a few of them become the guys. That's how this works. It's mostly pain. It's mostly pain. That's just the way it goes. Okay. So we're going to feel worse about almost every one of these players over the course of time. And when you get a chance to reset the bet in Dynasty, you generally want to take it. Like if someone's like, hey, I'll give you what you paid last year for JSN, take it. Okay. We got new information. It wasn't good. It's not to say that he can't win. It's not to say he can't be good now. He can. You could end up regretting doing this. But over a large sample, you resetting the bet is going to be good, because most of the time we're losing value out of these players. These players lose value across the large sample because it really comes down to the few hits. We're all mining for the few hits. So when you get a chance to reset the bet, you do it. This does feel a little bit like reset the bet to me, where you're saying you can trade out JSN for a rookie who went a little bit later, but he's more likely to have his production back weighted, and he's also more likely to be really, really good. So you're getting a chance to reset the bet still, I think. Maybe the prices change, and JSN in the future is a 9th, 10th round pick, and Ladd's a 5th round pick. And at that point, okay, yeah, give me JSN. But I don't think we're quite to the point where we're still basically, we're paying a small tax to reset our bet. And I think we generally want to be in that mindset.
Yeah, you got the cash out option on your sports book or whatever, right? And it was like, this is a completely horrible analogy. I don't actually mean it as an analogy, but you bet the Mavericks last night and they fall down like $1 million really quickly, and the actual cash out option is going to be far lower than you bet on that. I'm speaking as a Mavericks better last night, in case you can tell. They're down by 25 at halftime. If you were able to cash out your bet down 25, right? If you're able to cash out your bet for 20% discount, would you do it? Fuck yes, you would absolutely do it. You're like, they're not covering 6, dude. They're down 25. They're down 25 at halftime. They're currently 17-point underdogs on the live line. Cash that shit out for a small discount. But of course, the cash out is like, you would get 3% back of your original, because the market knows it's unlikely. So in this instance, it's the same thing. It's your exact analogy. It's like, I'm down 25 at halftime, and I just bet on a 6-point underdog. Am I going to bet the same? Like, I'm not betting them at +8. Like, no, they're down 25, dude. Like, you're like, why would you don't bet them at +8? You bet them at +18, right? Yeah, that's an efficient line. But I think that's it. We're buying JSN down 25 at halftime as like, +8. It's like we probably need more like +15 or something.
Yeah, and that's what we're debating, because they're like, how much is he down by,
What's
and
the
how much of a
number?
discount do you need? And I think we're all kind of like, I think it's more. He's down. I think
Yeah.
he's down by 20, not 25, but 20. And he's like, no, he's only down 12. I'm like, he's not down 12.
Yeah,
he's down more than 12.
You fucking idiot. They're not down 12. It's not 12. Yeah, that's all we're doing is we're like, is it 20? Is it 12? Is it 15? Is it, and there's no right answer. But I do think, like, dude, he was a 5th round pick last year, JSN, and he's a 7th round pick right now. That's not a big I know the market's different.
Right.
He go the wide receivers go higher, but it's still not a big discount for like a situation that is unchanged. Like at least, like you said, if Lockett was gone, we could tell ourselves that story. The situation's unchanged, so it's tough. It's same thing for JMO. Josh Reynolds is gone. Who gives a shit? Like nothing has changed for these guys.
Yeah. No, I mean. And like, I don't know, I'm not really taking JSN, or Quentin Johnson, but I think if you look at, like, we are getting the discount there. We're getting the discount with him, and it was a lot worse. I'm not saying they were equivalent rookie seasons. They were not. Johnson was much worse, but at least you are. Everyone agrees we're down 50. There's no one saying we're not down 50 with
no
JSN,
one is
with Quentin Johnson.
No one is arguing what the live line should be on QJ.
Everyone knows.
We all agreed it's over, right?
Yeah.
They took the cash out option off the table in the sportsbook app for QJ. You just accepted your L. But it's a great call out where it's like, we're not being super straightforward about comparing these situations. Like you said, it was worse. There's no, like, Tank Bigsby was worse than another rookie running back than Kendra, right? It was worse. But at least in that instance, like, the price is like kind of close enough. In this instance, these guys are going in the 7th round, and the other one is like in the last round. So like, I just feel like it's a spot where we, like I said, we would have historically been like, no, these guys are targets and league winners. And I feel like I've learned.
Yeah.
Like,
plus we're getting old and we're boomers now, and we're too afraid to take second year.
I mean, I'm drafting fucking Najee Harris and Zach Moss and Zeke and Rico Dowdle, baby. Like, you get the phrase "you get old fast." I didn't believe it until it happened. Until it happened.
Time is undefeated, man. That's yeah. We got burned by a couple of young wide receivers, and now we take Najee Harris. That's what happened.
I am the meme. I am the guy when I make fun of, like, he'll be playing pickup ball at the Y when he's 40 or whatever. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm 36 and I'm playing pickup ball at the Y and drafting Zeke on my fantasy team.
Zeke is way too cheap this year.
Yeah, I'm streaming content hyping Zeke Elliott in 2024 after coming home from the gym playing fucking pickup ball at the YMCA. Oh, yeah, God, I'm down bad, man. It's a tough scene, but we got to get out of here.
And on that note,
that's a perfect one to end on. I got to run to the vet. Pat's got to take care of a crying baby. But anything before we go?
No, that's it. Appreciate people listening, and check out legendaryupside.com. We got a lot of good stuff over there, including Underdog, DraftKings, FFPC, best ball rankings.
Totally agree. And if you sign up over there, you get 40% off Spike Week products with promo code LEGUP. That is the show. We'll see you guys next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace.